bad agenda.
We're on.
Actually. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Harwich Conservation Commission for April 17th, 2019. And first on the agenda, we have a request for termination of applicability for 47 Harbor Road, a deck expansion.
Good evening. For the record, Sean Riley, Coastal Engineering. If you remember, about a month ago, James Lipscomb came before you with an informal discussion about doing an expansion on his deck within a driveway. Commission felt that this was a project that could come before it with a RDA to determine whether or not this project would have any impacts on the resource area. Essentially, the closest resource area other than land subject to coastal storm flowage, and then a forced coastal bank far inland from any other resource area. The closest next resource area is several properties over, several hundred feet away. The proposed work is to expand a second-story deck almost entirely within the footprint of the existing pea-stone driveway, with the exception of a stair on the left-hand side that would be within the lawn area. There really shouldn't be a whole lot of disturbance with this. There'll be sonotubes for the posts that post down within the driveway, but other than that, it's a pretty straightforward project, so I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
Thank you. Amy, any thoughts for us?
Please recall, we visited the site together and had a brief discussion about this at a previous meeting. Kind of an unusual situation where you have because of the low topography, you have a coastal bank that is far inland from an actual wetland, if you will. So this deck expansion would be on what is considered a coastal bank due to the change in grade. However, it is very far away from an actual wetland. So it would be a second-story deck expansion over an existing driveway. And in this instance, I would recommend a -2 determination approving the project, that it will take place within a wetland, because technically the coastal bank and the subject to coastal flowage are the wetlands, but it will not have an adverse impact on the resource.
Thanks, Amy. Any questions from the commissioners? Paula, I'll start with you. No?
No.
None.
We are unanimous with the noes? Okay. Would someone like to make a motion on this project?
I'll make a motion to approve the request for the proposed deck expansion at 47 Arbor Road.
Okay.
Second.
With the -2, is it determination?
-2. Okay, seconded by Paula. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Please sign, that's coming around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Those two, yep. And I'll drop those up in a minute.
I'll be abstaining from this.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard. That's what
Next,
I
we
said.
have a request for determination of applicability for 14 Edward Road, a proposal to expand the deck.
Please pass this around. This is for this project. Came in a little late.
Sorry about that.
I don't know where it is. Just a misunderstanding, I think.
It will.
I did put it in the Dropbox as well.
I'm all set.
Want that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. William Kroll, the property owner, So this is maybe the petition you've been waiting for a number of years. But it's a deck expansion on the rear of my house at 14 Edward Road, 8-foot deck expansion. And I apologize for the lateness of the revised copy of the plan, but Amy wanted me to show the proposed mitigation planting area, which is that triangular portion of the plan, the top right. The square footage of the deck, the expanded portion of the deck is 215 square feet, and I'm more than happy to propose the 356 square feet, which would be more than 3 times the amount of the square footage of the deck expansion. That would be the mitigation planting with the 5 species: sheep, laurel, arrowwood, viburnum, high bush, blueberry, sweet pepper bush, and inkberry, 4 feet on center. The reason that I'm here is that the existing deck is more than 60 feet from the top of the bank. The proposed deck would be 56 feet, so it's beyond the 50-foot no-build zone. But you folks adopted a regulation last fall that said you want to avoid anything within 60 feet. So that's why I'm here, is that the surveyor shows the 60-foot conservation line going right through kind of the middle of the proposed deck. So it's not, in my opinion, too onerous of an encroachment onto the 60 feet. If you visited the site, that backyard is all pretty flat, grassy area. I have a small dock that extends out about 20, 25 feet from the stairs that show on the plan. That's a seasonal dock that's permitted. The proposed deck expansion would be on sonotubes. The existing deck is a deck above, so there would be little disturbance to the ground below it. Underneath the existing deck, if you visited the site, is, I call it myrtle. I think it would readily grow under the deck expansion as well. There's a bulkhead and an outside shower that show on the plan that make it impractical to wrap the deck around because it would be in the way of the bulkhead, and I just as soon not have people walking downstairs looking into the outside shower, if that could be avoided. And the stairs are on the other side of the existing deck. So I'm asking that the board consider varying its regulation, not the 50-foot no-build zone, but the 60-foot, the extra 10-foot regulation that you adopted last fall to allow for this deck expansion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments, Amy, for us?
Attorney Cole and I met out on the site probably about 2 weeks ago now, a little more, to discuss this, and discuss the 107.2 square foot addition to the deck, which would put it 56 feet away from the top of bank, which is actually more towards, it's not the actual top of the soil, but it is the top of bank. And just a couple quick things, Bill. on your plan, it shows 60-foot conservation restriction line.
Mhm.
I would just hesitate against maybe using that because in the future, it's not we don't have a conservation restriction on the property, and I never want to see a plan recorded that would show conservation restriction, which would be a deed restriction, and this isn't. So it should be something like 60-foot buffer zone or something like that.
I'll have to speak to the surveyor,
Yeah, no.
who happens to be my younger sister.
Yeah, I think we all know the intention, but if a plan like this was reported with that on it, then
Sure.
you want to make sure that there's not that language there. So that was just a nitpicky thing. But, so my summary is that, so it's 100 square foot addition, and it is greater than 50 but less than 60 feet away from the actual resource area. We created that regulation so that people would stop constructing right on that 50-foot line, and which by default means that there's going to be some sort of egress around that into the 50. Here you do have all lawn, and so I think potentially with some additional habitat creation, it could potentially be a warranted variance. If language could be put, that we can't have structures closer than that to the pond or something in the future. One thing I did speak with Mr. Cole about on the site was the location of the plantings, and the location where you see them, we discussed. I did think it was preferable for the protection of the resource area to extend, instead of just in a grouping in the corner of the lot, to extend more along the top of the slope there, maybe 1 or 2 rows instead of that grouping there, which would just enhance the vegetative buffer to the pond in that location. We also did, Bill, we were at the site today, doing our inspections, and we did notice right on your frontage there, where your grass meets, this is a small area where there is really no vegetation before the drop. It is slumping because there's not vegetation there, and we're thinking, potentially thinking, since there is a drop there, it wouldn't hurt to maybe put a few of the shrubs at that base of that toe slope there, but it should not impact your view. But it would help stabilize
The
that
base of
area.
it, not at the
Yeah,
top,
yeah,
at the base.
of it. It would help stabilize that to prevent further erosion, just a
That'd be
thought.
fine, it'd be great.
So I would just like to see, I would recommend we augment the plan a little bit instead of having it in that triangle area, that it extend from the staircase to the right for your planting area there, more along the top of that slope. But that's, with that condition, I think, I would recommend the granting of this variance.
Thank you, Amy. Any comments, Paul?
I was out there with Amy this afternoon, and I was gonna suggest some plantings along the top of the bank. There is definitely indication that there's somewhere in the way of some of the top of the bank, so that would be my preference to.
If we could solve that problem, that's fine with me.
Okay, and there's one other thing. The dock needs to be pulled up closer to the street. It sits right on the top of the bank,
Mhm.
and when it's stored, it should be stored about how many feet up?
Usually we say at least outside the 50-foot
Yeah.
buffer zone. We can chat about a better place for it. It's kind of right on some of the native vegetation right at the top of your slope there.
That's fine. My nephew and I lift that out in November, and it's somewhat heavy when it's soggy. So we may have to hire Mr. Coleman to bring in a bobcat or something.
Other than that, I think it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess that was my focus, and I think part of it is going back to some of the other sites we've talked about where Jim has really pointed out along the lakeside, wherever the natural shrubbery and whatever has been taken away and cleared out, you really see the erosion, which I've never really focused on before. And you can see your water line there, if you
Mhm.
look at the other sides where there is
Mhm.
planting
Mhm.
on there, it's out about 5 or 6 feet further into the lake, and that point is cutting in on you, and eventually it's gonna cut in, so I
Yeah.
think that's the focus on that.
If I may just comment on that, my folks bought this house in the mid to late 80s. That was cut in there already, and it has been an issue with the erosion
Right.
ever since. It was there when, and so it's been
It's getting worse.
25, 30 years. So I think it's mainly the big pine tree roots and the oak tree roots that are holding it together. So if some plantings at the bottom would help it, that'd be fine, that'd be great.
And I guess the other thing about I'm just going back to the regulation, I think when we expanded it to the 60, or I think our intent was really to protect the 50. And we usually try to keep a barrier beyond the 50 to protect that.
Right, and protect undeveloped habitats.
Right.
In this case, you have lawn
Right,
existing.
it's lawn, so less reluctant to grant the variance.
Mhm. Thank you, thank you.
Just for clarification, on this map, this is the staircase?
That's the staircase, yes.
And Amy, I thought that the barren area was to the left of the staircase, not to the right. It is to the left.
It is still a,
Looking
It
out-
is to the left.
Looking out on the
Yes,
left.
it is. You mentioned right, but we're talking about the bare left area.
Yes,
well, I was
she's talking about plantings on the right.
I was talking about putting most of these plantings extending along the top here, but then a few plantings instead of some,
Right.
putting a couple at the base there. So
Okay.
plantings on
Mhm.
both sides, but less on the left,
And not so many in the triangle.
and not so many in the
Right.
triangle, yeah.
Well, Amy, you certainly know better how many you could put on the left, but my impression was the area on the right was fairly well vegetated. And so I would think we'd want as many as you could get in reasonably on the left.
The slope is vegetated, but not the top at all,
Yeah.
really.
That's right. So that's my thought.
Thank you. Mark is abstaining. Okay, John, any comments?
No, I don't have anything to add. I'm in favor of granting variance, assuming that that eroded part is part of the agreement.
Jim?
Abstaining as well.
Okay, so in terms of planting success, what would be a typical condition for 2 seasons?
90%, I would 2 seasons.
Oh, 2 seasons, okay, so that can be a condition.
And that way, if something doesn't make it, then you have to replace it. But
Mhm.
usually we can see whether after a couple growing seasons, if things are gonna take or not.
Yep. Okay. Do we have a motion on the project?
I'll make a motion to approve the RDA for 14 Edward Road and grant the variance of the additional 6 feet we're talking about to comply with the drawings.
Less.
8 feet.
Oh, is it 8?
Or 8 feet, okay, within,
Mhm.
We were told 6, not
8 foot by
well, we'd
13.
be at the 56 feet
Right.
from the line. Okay, you're adding 8.
Okay.
Yes, I understand.
So grant the
Yes.
variance within what we've discussed
Mhm.
on the drawing, and the planting plan is revised, or will be revised maybe?
Yeah, if you could revise it, that would be wonderful.
I'll second.
Second by Carolyn?
It's just, now that we have clarification, it would be a -3.
-3.
Okay, with a -3 determination.
Okay, the motion is seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We have 2 abstentions, and the rest in favor. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
you.
Thank you.
All right. Please sign, and make sure. Make the changes. Sorry, this one's the make sure things stay in. I don't have a rubber band.
Revised plans.
Yeah, so basically, instead of having it go on, we can have it back. And then, that's the shape up there, something like that. Okay? No, we will get it too, because I gotta stamp, I'm gonna have to stamp the revision anyway.
Thank you very
We're
much.
good?
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. No, I don't do it. Hold on, maybe I have one here. I do. Dan, can you rubber band this? Otherwise, we will just
Uh-oh.
Wait, another one.
I guess I could put a knot in it.
No, don't worry about it. I'll get another one. Maybe. Wait, one more. Okay, I'm gonna pass this out to, the reason you're getting this late will be explained.
Okay. Next, we have a notice of intent for 47 North Road, proposal to upgrade the septic system.
Sorry, the one after that. My site summary's not in order. We are 47 North.
Let's see, I guess John got that.
Good evening, I'm Stephanie Sequin with Browder & Wilcox, and I'm representing the owners of the property at 47 North Road. And this is a request to replace an existing cesspool. The property is for sale, and under the Harwich Board of Health regulations, if it's a cesspool, it has to be upgraded prior, or in order to sell the property. So the current owners are going ahead with that to try and get the permitting in place, so hopefully they'll be all set when they get a buyer. This property is, I believe you all went out on the Herring River, barely above the Herring River. It's within, there's a timber bulkhead that surrounds the existing building and is considered the top of a coastal bank. The entire property lies within the 100-year flood zone. There are several different A zones here. The elevation is either 11 or 12, depending on which part of the property you're on. And the existing surface elevation is somewhere around 3 or 4. So it's in a very low area. And not a whole lot of space to work with. So what we're proposing here is a tight tank, a 1,000-gallon precast concrete holding tank. The waste pipe coming out of the building, instead of going into the cesspool, will go into this holding tank, and as it fills, there will be an alarm that when the level gets to a certain, when the liquid level gets to a certain depth, the alarm will go off, alerting the homeowner or whoever's in the building that they need to think about having it pumped out. So that's what's being proposed here. I've included between the notes on the plan and the notes in construction protocol in the narrative, specified that a silt fence be installed in the yard around the work area. There may be the need for dewatering when the excavation for the tight tank is going on, so I included description of how that should be done. They should put a filter sock over the discharge pipe and pump the water toward the silt fence, and then any siltation that accumulates there will be removed when they're done with the installation. All excavated material will be placed directly into a dump truck. There's no room for any stockpiling on this property, so they'll just put it right into trucks or a truck to be hauled off-site. We've tried to, because this is in the flood zone, the tank is going to be in the groundwater. We have several specifications for the holding tank to ensure that it remain watertight. It will be a precast monolithic tank, meaning it's as not cast, and there isn't a seam, there's not a seam in the middle. It's one continuous pour, so there's less chance of there being any leakage at that center seam. We've specified that the exterior be treated with a waterproof coating. The inlet pipe will have a cast-in-place rubber boot seal to make sure that connection between the pipe and the tank is watertight. So we've tried to think of every bell and whistle that we could to try and make sure that once this is in the ground and in use, that it's not going to cause any issues or have any adverse impact. So I will leave it at that and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Amy, any thoughts?
Other than what Stephanie's already said, not too much. I think from going from a cesspool to a tight tank, that's going to be, I believe, seasonal use.
There is no heat in the building
Okay.
currently.
I didn't know if Board of Health put a 6-month max on it, or is...
We have not gone to the Board of
Okay.
Health. We're scheduled May 12th, I
Okay.
think.
So whatever restriction they put on it for usage would be what. It's a pre-developed, how old is the cottage, 50s?
1950, according to the assessor's field card.
So predates any regulation. So, I mean, this is a substantial upgrade right now. Any effluent pretty much goes right out into the river. So, the only thing I did notice was there does seem to be a 12-inch cedar tree kind of right where the line between the house and the tank is. And I would just recommend that if that tree is, one, I didn't know if it was to be removed, the root system be impacted during installation to that point. I was thinking probably.
It probably would, yeah.
So as to not put, I mean, I would like to have a tree put back there, but it's such a small, tiny lot right on the water. I think that the potential root systems of if it was a big tree, would potentially impact the new system, which we don't want to happen. So I just recommend maybe a couple of feet long being, which are medium-sized shrubs, to be put back. But in general, I think this is a great improvement, and any new owner who has this, if they want to do what's considered substantial improvement to the unit, to the structure, if they do more than 50% of whatever the value of that structure is, they will be back in front. Well, they'll be back in front of conservation regardless, anything they do. But if it's greater than 50% of the value of that structure, it will have to come up to flood code. But I would recommend approval of this project.
Thank you, Amy. Paul, any
I
comments?
have no questions. I think it's pretty cut and
Yeah.
dry.
Yeah, same stand?
It's an improvement.
Yeah.
No questions at all.
I just have one question, which is on the plan, there's another tree there, which I first thought it said 2-inch cedar, but I think it actually says 12-inch cedar.
That's the one I
I
was
think it
talking
does, yeah,
about.
12-inch.
Oh, I thought you were referring to the pine.
No, that's the cedar.
Oh, okay, all right. I don't have any questions.
Yeah, that's my only comment, is to do something to replace the tree or trees if they are removed.
Okay.
I think it's possible that both of them would be impacted, or just...
There's such little space I could see both of those trees going.
Right. I think there is room for at least, red cedar trees don't grow that aggressively. So if both had to go, maybe a cedar could replace the pine and the beech plums could
Mhm.
replace the cedar or something like
Okay.
that, just to keep some vegetation on the area.
Just to take that a little further, what are your thoughts on replacing a cedar? Because I would value a cedar replacement, one for one.
Yeah, that's what I meant with the
Right.
replace the.
Do you think you could fit one in that general footprint?
I mean, once the work is done, especially if the pine is coming out, then I think a cedar could go back in that location.
Mhm.
So, the only other comment, we could stipulate that it be at least a 6-foot tall planting to taking out 2 mature trees.
Mhm.
Put in a little sapling in,
Yep.
Okay.
I don't know if there's comments in the audience.
Any comments from members of the audience? No? Okay. Do we have a motion here at the table?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the notice of intent for 47 North Road. Upgrade from a cesspool to the tight tank with the discussed stipulations about plantings.
Amy, should that have a determination, -3?
It's a notice of intent,
Okay.
sorry.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Stan seconds it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Okay, thank you.
These are coming around for the next one, and yeah, we will tell you why.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's 3 things coming. It was not known until kind of the last minute whether revisions would be needed, so.
Mhm.
It's actually, this I believe is what you saw in your Dropbox anyways. But these are just paper copies. Oh, this is, yep, so you should get 3 things for this. Oh, I'm sorry. And I need to take one. Yep, so this is different from that, yeah. There we go.
So, Amy, there were only 2 documents in the Dropbox, so what is additional here?
I think this is project overview.
At least I-
Was the project overview,
It may have been, project overview might have been in the last.
Was this in the last one?
previous
It should have been.
Oh,
Okay.
it's the same.
I think it's the same.
Same thing
You didn't make any
as in-
modifications to it?
Profile, yes, so this was not in there.
I don't-
This was
I
the
actually-
same.
It's the same, okay.
Right, but the plans are in your Dropbox.
We didn't know if there were any revisions to the project narrative, so we supplied them anyway.
And I'll take whatever copies extra you have.
Do you have them, Lee?
Well, it's, yeah, for safety, so take what you need and I'll take the rest. So you all should have 2 new plans and 1 narrative.
Should be with the Lee, right? Can you change it?
What's the date on the land management plan, or the protocol, project overview that you have?
Sorry. Brad, I apologize, I may have been passing things out, I didn't know if you announced the hearing or not.
I haven't.
Oh, I didn't know if I
Yep.
missed it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was on tonight, so I just
Sorry.
wanted to hold back. So it is on?
It is,
So-
and we'll tell you all about it.
Okay. So next we have a notice of intent, continuation for 7 Great Woods Road, removal of parking area, installation of walkway, and beach modifications.
Good evening. For the record, Sean Riley, Coastal Engineering, and Katrine Higgins from Wilkinson Ecological. And the reason why we didn't know if we'd be on tonight is we've been working with NHESP basically since the last time we met. And they're a little overwhelmed with their workload, so we've been trying to push through this to get the information that they need. We provided them with the cross-section, which is one of the plans that you have, as well as the revised restoration plan. And we finally received a letter from them, which have you provided them with that letter that we got today at 3:30?
I don't know if I put it in, probably not,
okay.
because we didn't have time
Yep.
to.
So we get a letter today at 3:30 today from NHESP stating that this is not a take. They will not be taking charge of this, and as long as we meet everything written in the order of conditions, then there shouldn't be any adverse impact to the rare species or habitat. So the last time we met out on site, we reviewed some of the changes that we made to the mitigation planting plan as well as to the edges of the beach area. A little more clarification, a little more mitigation, and for those of you that didn't have a chance to attend that site visit, Katrina will walk you through some of those changes.
Sure, thanks. So, we heard your comments, as Sean was saying, your comments and your feedback in the first hearing and also the observations made during those site visits. And we've provided you with a restoration plan that has more details and more information. If you recall, we kind of approached this project in a different manner than normal projects we have, or a more typical project that we have, because at the early stages of this design process, we met with Amy, your agent, and provided a few alternatives of what could be done to address this property. And then based on her feedback, and we developed a preferred alternative. And at that point, during the hearing, we provided some kind of more diagrammatic plans, just to make sure that we put in any kind of feedback or any kind of information you had during that first hearing. We thought it was important to get that in this more detailed plan. So that's what you have before you, is all the comments that we heard in the various meetings we've had over the last few months. So just to take you through a few of the main changes or additions to this plan. First, we're no longer proposing fiber roll protection in that existing beach area. I think that was one of the main comments during the first hearing, and as Amy mentioned in that hearing, you wanted to see a more naturalized grade change instead of a fiber roll or anything like that. So you'll see now we're proposing to regrade the edge of the pond, just real natural and natural edge. And actually NHESP, I believe, requested an additional section on that area, so we've provided that, and how you see the existing topography, and then how the proposed grade will just come in a more naturalized grade change down to the edge of the pond without a revetment there at all, or the stones there. They will be removed. We also talked in that first hearing about really protecting, and that was where our thoughts on adding a fiber roll. The fiber rolls was really along the edge, just adjacent to the edge of the pond and the beach area. There's really beautiful and mature trees. There's tupelo and red maple in particular, and we were really focused on making sure those remain healthy and they don't get impacted by anything that would be proposed. So we're no longer proposing the fiber rolls, but we are proposing in that area tucked up along those trees is to provide erosion control blanketing there and planting with some freshwater wetland grass species that would do really well along that edge there, and just to get more stabilized area there. You'll also see on our plan we're proposing to move the kayak rack, just relocating it in the existing lawn farther away from the resource area. And then we've provided substantially more mitigation plantings, really focused on enhancing that 0 to 25 buffer in particular, where it was discussed in the hearing where there's open areas currently. So that's where our mitigation planting focuses on those areas within the 0 to 25 that need vegetation currently. And you'll see we have quite a diversity of plants specified in the native woody plants section on our restoration plan. We're proposing over 90 woody plants, including holly and serviceberry, for that entire area, along with, in addition to that, some shrubs, some low-growing shrubs that wildlife like eastern box turtles really appreciate, things like black huckleberry and low bush blueberry, really focusing on having that stratification of the grasses and the lower shrubs all the way to larger species like serviceberry and holly to just enhance what's there currently. Overall, I think it's important to focus on our restoration plan. We've provided site coverage, increase in site coverages, and then proposed mitigation. The graphs there on the right bottom portion of our plan, and I think it's important to kind of highlight those ratios that of mitigation that we're offering for this. So in the 50 to 100, we're proposing a 2.8 to 1 mitigation ratio. And then in the 0 to 50, we're proposing a 9.5 to 1 ratio for mitigation to the increase in site coverage that has occurred on the site. And this is all in an effort to provide enhanced habitat area for wildlife, as well as to protect Long Pond from stormwater runoff. And we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. You have a summary, Amy?
Sure. So another reason we didn't get the plans physically until later is because in case Heritage came back with yet another request for a change, I didn't want it to be too confusing. I mean, there's already a lot going on. So, what you have in your Dropbox would be what you have in front of you. And so, just to bring it kind of back to the beginning real quickly to remind everybody of the things. We're here because of self-incriminated violation, and it was for the installation of rocks that went across the frontage of the beach, staircase with a landing, some terraced walkways, and it's still kind of unknown about the deck situation. I couldn't find out any more information after the last go around about that. So the deck and walkways are about at the 50-foot. The staircase goes down the slope, and then the rocks are obviously right there to the water. So I think what is proposed is going to be far better ecologically and ecological diversity-wise than what's here. What Heritage was concerned about was, and I spoke with Heritage myself on the phone today about it, just to kind of see where they were at too, and to see, because we've gone through a few hearings of this. They were concerned about, one, how the rocks were going to be removed, and I stated what I thought and said, well, please contact the contractor or the engineer, but that a mini excavator would probably go down, grab the rocks, take them out, and then she was concerned about the type of fill to be used or sediment, and I said it would have to be compatible bank sand to this area. It couldn't be screened perfect beach sand.
Right.
It has to be compatible bank sand. So they were concerned mainly, just so you know, evidently Long Pond has a rare mussel, freshwater mussel. So they were concerned about that, but they said as long as it was done really from the landward side and as carefully as possible, they didn't think, well, one, there was no notation that there were the mussels here at this particular property. And then they were also concerned about the same plants that we saw down the pond a little bit. I think it was some type of a sedge, maybe? I can't remember. But it was a plant that they had been concerned about, and the woman I spoke to, Miss Deanne, spoke with her counterpart and said that this property, I guess it kind of studied this very extensively, was not here. So they issued the letter that 3:30 this afternoon with a notate provided regulations for conservation. So right now, there, as proposed, there would only be any type of really structural support right at the edge of the pond to hold the vegetation that's being planted, correct? And the rest is just going to be planted. There's a lot more planting on the northeastern side, trying to enhance the buffer over there. I guess, I mean, long story short, with some conditions, I would recommend approval. I cannot, unfortunately, I think it would just be inconsistent with whatever other people have asked for and we have denied in the 50-foot, that landing on the staircase. I think it would be very inconsistent. The staircase, we allow access, but the landing and any associated, any of the terrace or the walkway in the 50-foot itself, except for there's a tiny little corner up by literally at 59, or at 49 feet kind of on the western side. And that, I would need to pick them. Basically off the existing stairway where structures are in the 50, I would recommend that those not be allowed to stay. I think the replanting plan is great.
Thanks, Sammy. Paul, do you want to start with questions?
No, I remember being down there and I was really, really concerned about the beach, but it seems like that's been great consideration has been given to that, and I have no other comments or questions.
Stan?
Yeah, I'm not concerned about what the beach and what you're proposing to do there, but this is a new project, right? For us to consider.
This is an after-the-fact approval of sorts with modifications.
Right, so does 50-foot or versus a 60-foot apply?
It's a good question. I think when this work was done was prior to our 60-foot, but it was done in violation.
Without an application?
Without application. So, I mean, it was done prior to October when the 60 came into place, but it was done in violation. So that is up to you. It can also, I mean, you could, if you saw fit, grant a variance with all, given the other things that are being done. That's up to you.
And the question regarding the deck, because that is being put in without, or expanded without our application, we're assuming to allow that?
Well, this would technically be the first application that shows the deck as it is on the site. The first permit that would show the deck as it is, I believe. So.
With if I may add, with the expansion to the east, the original plan had the deck. They expanded the deck. The previous owner expanded it in 2005. I think that was the year that we looked back at the images. About 2005 is when that expansion of the deck to the east took place. I think that to your comments, within the 60-foot, that's what would be require a variance today to be constructed. So just to give clarification of.
But when I was looking at that, like for example, from the house, the stairs off the deck to the right of that, those look a new addition to that deck. Something brand new. I mean, there's all new cement, there's new stairs. I don't think those were there before.
The stairs were there before. They had to replace them.
Two
Those were
sets?
there. Yes, two
Two
sets.
sets?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that was my question. That's all I have.
Okay. Kevin?
I think the mitigation plan is extensive and admirable. I get a little frustrated with these after-the-fact requests. And so I would be in favor of taking out the landing, dealing with the beach and the plantings as described, but I would also be in favor of a fine.
Thank you. What we'll do is we'll discuss the notice of intent after the fact filing, and then I think we'll have a separate vote on the fine. So we'll probably come back to it, but yeah, by all means, let us know how you feel about the fine, because that is in play. Mark, any comments?
Yeah, the mitigation, I think, is very well done. My only thought is the existing stairway. I'd be very apprehensive about removing that. Did I understand you correctly? Amy, did I understand you correctly?
Saying what?
That you recommended removing the stairway as well as the landing?
No, the landing and the, there's kind of a terraced walkway at the top up by the deck that extends into, there's a section of it up there.
Okay, all right, I misunderstood.
But no, the stairs, while they're probably more formal than we would normally,
Right.
it does keep people on a path and it breaks up the slope so that there shouldn't be any erosion, so it could go either way with the stairs, but I don't see a,
Well, that's exactly what I was getting at.
I don't see a negative to keeping them
Right, okay,
environmentally.
thank you.
That's it. John?
Yeah, so, I just have a simple question, which is on the plan, there's the words X deck inside a small dotted line. I initially looked at that and thought that small dotted line was the existing deck. And is that the case or not? I'm confused, I continue to be confused about the status of the deck. So, that dotted line, which on there doesn't
So-
appear to have any verb, oh,
Yeah,
I
no,
just can't see it.
Yeah, and I think it's their
It's
verbiage, it's on
misleading, yeah.
the mitigation planting plan, but on the existing conditions plan, this is the roofed area, the
Oh, I
outline of
see,
the roofed
that's
area, it's a
right.
screen-in porch, and
I
then
see.
the
So
deck
that's-
is the surround of that. So this is, entire area is deck with the roofed area for the screen porch.
Okay, so as Stan pointed out, that there was a lot of new construction underneath the deck that made it appear that the deck had been recently extended. However, Amy is saying that no, the previous photographs showed that it has been like that for some time,
2005.
since 2005. However, we need to make a distinction between an unpermitted footprint being pre-existing and new work done on the unpermitted footprint without any new unpermitted work being done on the unpermitted footprint. So I don't think that
That could be a
that-
discussion for fun to find.
that we can look at any of that deck as being grandfathered because it was there since 2005. So, and I'm honestly not sure about how to deal with that, but I think that given that it's unpermitted new work, with a somewhat indefinite timeline on when that happened, that the 60-foot, the newer 60-foot restriction should apply in this case, and we should consider this as a request for a variance on the 60-foot, the 60-foot
It's a regulation.
regulation for any structures. And so I guess the question here in my mind is, given everything else that's going on here, and there's a lot of moving parts here, so that one of the questions before us that we should be considering is, are we willing to grant that variance even though it's already in place? I guess I agree with the other comments that have been made about all the extensive planting, but I still have planting, all the extensive planting, and it all looks great, but I still have a question about the beach, which is, there's an erosion issue there, and I think I forget who said it, but we've discussed this more than once, that somehow replacing the rock with going back to the original slope of just plain sand should break things up, but as we've pointed out earlier this evening, has been pointed out, I think Stan pointed it out, that where there is no vegetation, you're going to get erosion, and I have a lot of doubts about whether the existing plan is really going to work well in terms of mitigating potential erosion. And I understand that the owners want a nice big beach on the pond, but I have questions about whether we shouldn't be, given all the other violations here, we shouldn't be insisting on vegetation on the pond front here. And I'd like to hear other commissioners' ideas about that.
Jim?
All right. Well, yeah, I agree with Amy's recommendation about not allowing the landing and the terracing to stay. think most of the planting plan looks great. I think in the final version here are, we have lawn regulations that go to the 100-foot buffer for no chemicals of any kind, no fertilizer of any kind, and any reseeding to be a meadow mix or whatever, for that to be incorporated. The beach erosion thing that John brought up, I'm not really sure about. One thought that I had when we were discussing it earlier was that at the landward edge of the beach where it meets the grass area was to try and get some sort of plantings in at that transition, just so you had root structure there. So if there ever was any erosion, it would kind of run into that root structure. That's the only thought I have on that. That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple comments before I'm going to ask for comments from the audience. I think I agree with the notion of removing the structures on the beach and the 2 terraces. The walkway certainly warrants discussion. I think if this came before us as a new proposal, I don't think we would have the walkway have gone in that location. In fact, I think there's been a walkway established for many decades just going down the side over there. So I think that it's something that we probably would not have approved, but in this case it might be too disruptive to remove it. So I guess I agree with the notion to allow that to stay with the 2 terrace features and the 50 removed. I'm not sure what to say about the deck. It's just, it's complicated. I think at the very least that activity should be part of our fine discussion, and I would like to bring that up when we're concluding this discussion here. But I do appreciate the evolution of the planting plan. I think it's really, it's come together nicely. And so there is a lot of value in that mitigation there, and so that helps me accept the staircase, I think, with the mitigation plan. I do have a question on the use of glyphosate. So I guess for 2 of the invasives, that's the preferred method. Is there an alternative for us? We've been thinking about the use of this herbicide in the 0 to 50, and we haven't really come to any consensus on that. Are there alternatives for those particular types of invasives?
There's the alternative of triclopyr as well that could be used, but you know, I know that it's a hot topic in towns around here. I believe there was a conversation or at the Harwich Conservation Trust recently, or a presentation there that I believe talked about the use of herbicide and the responsible use, as we would be proposing all of our applicators are licensed with the state, licensed with the state, and we would be using everything by according to the label and according to the Massachusetts laws. So there is the alternative of triclopyr that certainly could be utilized for these species in particular.
Any thoughts? Both are approved herbicides, but any thoughts on, one over the other, close to a resource area?
We've used them both, yeah. So either way.
It's sometimes, if I might, it comes down a lot, from what I understand, to the methodology of application. So, I mean, certainly not in favor of chemicals wherever they don't need to be used.
Right.
But if it's done, it can be the most effective if done correctly in ideal situations.
Right.
Particularly the cut and wipe method instead of a foliar spray application.
We wouldn't be
where
using
you target specific stems of plants. But I understand the concern.
Yeah, we all dislike invasives, but in some cases there's some habitat value, and then there's the trade-off. We're all getting more and more uncomfortable about these herbicides, and so if it's next to an important resource area, did you want to comment on that?
I have more a question than a comment. It says in here glyphosate based. So my question is this, would you be using an herbicide where the only active ingredient is glyphosate? Because like Roundup comes with other things that are meant to make it stick to the leaves.
Right.
And if
The
you're just doing cut and
surfactant.
wipe, you don't need that. So my question, and some things I've read about, things like Roundup, I mean, glyphosate has its issues, but I have read in the past that the other things that are in there sometimes are more acutely toxic to wildlife than the glyphosate itself. So that's my question. Is it just glyphosate, or are you just taking Roundup and painting it on these things?
So there's a lot of different articles out there, and people are
Yeah.
getting information on Facebook, and so there's a lot of different opinions and things out there, but there is the surfactant, I think is what you're talking about, and there is rodeo would be the wetland approved application that would not have that surfactant in it.
So when you refer to glyphosate-based herbicides, you're specifically referring to rodeo?
It depends on the project, but it could
In
be
here,
either.
though.
I mean, we could use rodeo, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I have one other question for our group. What are the implications with this deck that's been built and unapproved? If we allow it to stay there, what implications does that have with any other projects that we encounter like that?
I would venture to say that, given the age of when this happened, that we shouldn't consider it to have implications. You know, everything's case by case. This is not recent. The other things that happened in the 0 to 50 are recent, and I think we should discuss it.
I guess when it's recent that it was built, but it's been all refurbished recently.
Right.
So that was my point earlier, is that if they had come and asked us, you know, if this had been before us, where those, the maintenance was being done, basically right up against the 50, but inside the 60, then that would have been one thing. We could have considered it as a grandfathered configuration. But since that didn't happen, now we're considering it after the fact. And to me, it complicates that, and it's not so clear to me that we can just consider it as something that was done a long time ago. I'm not quite sure.
If I could speak to that?
Mm-hmm.
So we were unaware as the professionals that this deck was not even permitted because of, just for the simple fact that the filing was done on 9 and there was no information on 7. So the purchaser of the property actually has it in their purchase and sales agreements that the seller has received all permits required for any of the structures on the property. And they were unaware that, and we were unaware that that deck expansion was not permitted, first of all. And the second point to that is the deck was in disrepair, and they were replacing deck boards and sistering on floor joists for safety. They went to the building department. Unfortunately, the building department didn't follow through, or they didn't follow through with conservation for the work that was on the deck itself. When Amy went out to the site, she realized that when she found the file in the 9 that this deck was not approved, issued the cease and desist appropriately to stop the work. So that is the work that I think you're speaking of, to make the repairs of the existing deck. But the existing expansion was 14 years ago, and unbeknownst to the owner that purchased the property a year and a half ago, that was making repairs. They weren't doing any expansions to that existing deck. And for what we thought we were coming in with originally was just the work that was done with the stairway, the terrace, and the beach area. We had no idea that this was even part of the after-the-fact filing until Amy made it apparent to us that this was in fact done without a permit. So I just say keep that in mind, or bear that in mind when you review the deck aspect of this project. And I also think that, and if I may just comment on the scouring of the beach, laying back the beach at a much more gentler slope, I know Seth, you probably came up to speak to this, is a design perspective, an engineering design perspective that knocks down the wave action and really decreases the scouring potential. And that's why we took this design route to lay the beach back in this manner. It really, and it's also shallow out in front of this area. It's where you have that taller slope to it that you do have the potential for scouring within this area. So that's the design perspective that we took to really knock down the wave energy right at the forefront, and it should just dissipate as it comes in. So we feel as professionals that the scouring issue should go away with this design within the beach area, and hopefully the matting of the areas by the tree should also suffice to protect those shoulders.
The only thing I would say in addition to that is it's matting, but with aggressive planting. So as that grade shifts down from existing grade where it's forested down to the beach, so the beach is going to get smaller because we'll be densely planting that. And I think I'm very confident with, as someone who's been doing this for about 20 years, that when you have that shallow grade, that's going to address the erosion. The other way to do it is to buffer it with fibrils, and we respect, you weren't in favor of that. So the way we've sort of pivoted on that design is increase the planting along the shoulders there, and then have the provision that in the event we get a storm in the wintertime, be closely monitored, we'll go in there and add a little sacrificial sand to protect those plants and make sure that they're not getting undermined. And once they're rooted in, it's going to be just like the rest of the shoreline, where the vegetation is doing a very nice job of holding it. But that changing that geometry, we're very confident that will address, because it'll just give all that. There's nothing for the waves to erode out. They've just got a gentle slope. Just like at the public beach, obviously a much larger example. But if you think about Long Pond, you've got a nice gentle slope down at the public beach. And I think it'll, on a much, much smaller scale, it'll be behaving the same way.
Just one more comment. And we also agree that the existing landing has no place in the 0 to 50 foot buffer, and think it should be taken out as well. And also think that the stairway, even though it is a little bit more than you probably would have approved, removal of that also would create more disturbance than benefit. And with the 4,000 square feet of plantings and the enhanced plantings that we provided in the 0 to 50 foot buffer, we hope that would offset some of that.
Amy had a comment?
Just going back to the deck. Something to think about too is, so this was done, granted illegally, in around 2005. So our regulations have changed since then. But I try to think back, and it's hard to know what the commission would have permitted at that time. We did have a 50 foot right around that time that went in, early 2000s that went in. And sometimes, and Brad can attest to this, sometimes people were allowed to go right up to the 50, sometimes they were made to go back. It wasn't, and that's, why we create our new regulations is to be more exact about what it could be. But it was one of those ones where, depending on the situation and depending on mitigation or whatever that was offered, sometimes the commission would go up to that line or hold a few feet back from that line. It was kind of a moving target at that point. So that was one of the reasons I didn't really target it as part of the, as necessarily for removal, but that's certainly to be talked about. I don't know if the commission saw this too, and Paul actually pointed it out to me. Did the commission see that in front here of the sandy area, there are now, it's not just going to be sand that goes into the water, there actually is going to be a vegetated blanket of, it's gonna be mostly wetland type grasses, but that should also help keep that stabilized. And that's fox sedge, blue joint grass.
Oh.
Yeah, pond edge stabilization, that's new to this project.
I had a question on that, Amy.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Right
It's
on-
actually just proposed for those shoulders that we were talking
Sure.
about.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry.
Not for the entire
The
stretch.
hatch is just, sorry, I apologize.
that's different.
The
hatch-
hatching is referencing.
Right, it's right here, but it's
The revetment
Okay.
that's
symbols
going
wrong.
Okay.
I apologize about
Sorry, I
that.
thought you were.
Is it all along the shore?
No, it's just on those shoulders,
Oh, okay.
protecting those trees.
Yep.
Oh,
That's pretty rocky in there.
I had a question in regards to those plants. It sounds like it's quite stable and you've had good luck with that, but there's not, to me, a lot of root structure there. They're grasses. Is there any possibility to consider something that might have a greater root structure, like you might see if you go, 100 feet over either way off the property? You'll see, larger shrub-type plants. Is that something that is considered or would make sense?
It's actually the grasses that hold and stabilize soils actually better than shrubs,
Okay.
because they're, especially the native grasses, their root systems go down and they're fibrous, so they go down into the roots and kind of hold that in place, where and they're putting out a lot more new roots every year, where the woody shrubs don't do that. They're not fibrous and they're not putting those roots. I mean, they're always growing their roots, but you really want the grasses. That's why when all of our projects, once we do any kind of removal, we immediately seed with that native layer of grasses to get that established. And then a year from then, we would plant the shrubs. But that does the heavy lifting.
Okay. So where you see the shrubs, to the west from here, it's probably because of shading, you don't see the grasses. Is that why the grasses wouldn't?
Right, we would be planting, like Pennsylvania sedge does well, and crinkle hairgrass in shady areas. Little blue stem wouldn't do as well in the shadier areas.
Okay. Thanks.
I still have a problem with the deck, and I want to question from a different perspective. I know what we're discussing is in the purview of the Conservation Commission and the wetlands area. But I do have, so was the deck approved from a building, did they have a building permit when it was done?
2005?
Oh.
When it was
2005 or
redecked, it did.
redone?
Just recently it did, 2005, I don't know if we know that.
Yeah, I don't know if there was a history of it.
No, because my question
Recently-
being that recently, there's homes in my neighborhood that when it comes time to sell, things are discovered by the town,
Yeah.
rooms are removed, changed.
Yep.
I know, I'm not a lawyer, but I know at the time of my closing, the lawyer said, well, if anything was ever discovered, that you had to be, title insurance covers that. So even though we're discussing it from a wetlands perspective, was the deck approved to begin with?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, Mike Ford, I'm counsel to the owners of the property. Just to answer this gentleman's question, if I might. So I think what you're talking about is this permittable or is it allowed under our zoning bylaw, for example? And that's a good question. There was a provision that was adopted in Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Sections 7 and 8, when the Zoning Act first came in back in the late 70s, that said that if you made improvements to a property and you had a building permit, and the building inspector was wrong for some reason, he issued it in error, that after 6 years, no action could be brought by anyone against the property owner to require that to be changed. So it was a 6-year window. That same section also provided that if you made those improvements without a building permit, that after 10 years, the statute of limitations ran against the town bringing an action to have that structure removed. That's recently been amended to be even more flexible. 2 years ago, 40A Sections 7 and 8 were amended once again, And it now provides that if something has been there for 10 years and there was no building permit, then not only is there a right to keep it there, but it's now considered pre-existing non-conforming and gets the benefits of being a pre-existing non-conforming structure under the State Zoning Act. So it would appear to me, if this was built in 2005, as this schedule of improvements states, or around that time, what the aerials show, that it's legal under zoning, and therefore could be repaired under zoning.
Thank you. Yeah, so for the deck, do you have any suggestions on how we can proceed with your concerns on the deck? I'm viewing it as that's something, the deck work that was done recently is part of the mitigation response. That's the way I'm viewing it. And so is there another?
Well, that questionnaire, like I said, that was
So
out
that's-
of our purview
that's
anyway.
zoning, so yeah, that's-
We're dealing from a wetlands perspective, and I understand that. So
Right.
I think going back to what we discussed, the potential for a fine, I think is.
Right, and I think the fine makes a lot of sense to me, but I wasn't sure if there was something, John, that you had to suggest a different way to
No,
view
in
this.
fact, I don't have an alternative to suggest, so
Okay.
I guess I'm leaning towards accepting as much wetlands mitigation as we can possibly get in order to offset this hard to digest violation. But I don't see much else to be done about it.
Right.
I don't have an alternative suggestion.
I think I agree with you, and I think if we were to take a harder line at any one feature of this, I think we would look at the walkway, because that was done recently, and that's something that I don't think we would have approved. But I do agree with folks that think it would be very disruptive to take it out, so. Any more thoughts on the deck, or? Okay. Any comments from the audience?
Are you still at a point, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize, I got here late, came from another meeting in New Orleans, that is the possibility of a fine still being discussed with commission members?
Yes.
May I address that?
We're going to have a separate discussion on that in a minute, so I think we want to tackle the notice of intent
Understood.
after the fact. And
Would I get an opportunity to be heard during that session?
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And, okay, any other thoughts on different features we'd like to see modifications to? I wish we could do something else about the herbicide treatment in the 0 to 50. That's probably a discussion that we'll have as time goes on.
Is there any foliar application proposed here?
No, there wouldn't be.
We can stipulate that in the order of conditions.
Generally, we wouldn't allow
Right.
that. Only be injected or cut and like.
Right, sure. That would be the focus.
Any modifications to the planting plan? There's been a lot of progress there. I think, any other thoughts on that? So we'd be approving an after-the-fact filing of a notice of intent. And we'll address the fine immediately after. Unless somebody would prefer that we incorporate the fine into the notice of intent. I don't know if it matters.
As long as you don't, you can do it separately, just don't, we're not closing this hearing anyways, because we have to have the draft orders and conditions, so if you would prefer to have the vote, two separate votes, one on the notice of intent and one potentially on fines, that's fine, as long as you
Okay.
don't close the hearing.
Sure.
But then our notice of intent is, our vote on the notice of intent could be affected by a negative vote on fines. Like, I don't know if I'd vote for the notice of intent unless I was assured we'd get fines.
Well, I have no problem incorporating that into the notice of intent.
Whatever you'd like to do.
Okay. Well, just to expedite things, what I would motion for a fine structure is to have a fine for the event of the platform put in the beach, for the revetment, for the walkway, and for the deck work done unauthorized recently on that 50-foot edge. So,
if
for-
I could, platform, rock work, staircase, and then the deck work done recently without authorization in that 50-foot line.
Sorry.
all right, because I was saying the deck itself would be way past, like the previous deck, it was done in 2005 with a previous owner, you're
Well,
saying the new work.
Yeah, there's new concrete, there's new wood along that walkway.
All right,
And that's just, let's put that out there for discussion on that.
You know,
for
my
activities.
personal opinion, I would like to keep them separate, because I might vote one way for one thing, but you incorporate the fine,
Mm-hmm.
you might, that confuses, to me, that confuses the issue even more. I don't know, just to, how to vote for it.
Okay, well, Carolyn,
I don't know.
I can go either way.
okay, anyone else feel strongly about separating the fine and the fine discussion?
What is the value of the fine?
$300 per event is our maximum, unless we have a repeated infraction where people don't stop doing what we ask them to stop. So in this case, it would be $300 per those 4 events.
Okay, so we're only talking about $1,200.
We can't do much more than that.
Now, as we across these problems, can we find the contractor? Somebody put in that stairway and knew that they were following our regulations. Somebody deliberately.
That was that company that we discussed
Right, the management,
prior,
the management
and
company.
maybe it would be up for the client to pursue that with that old management company, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's some gray area here, and it's disturbing.
Mhm.
You know, it's something I've seen repeatedly on my time in the commission.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
it's a problem, it's very disturbing. The explanations we often get are not very satisfying. So I think that's why I'm in favor of issuing the fine, just to document it and to get that message out there that these actions.
Well, from your perspective, does it matter including it or not, or keeping them separate?
For me, it doesn't matter, because but I know your point, because you might choose to vote differently on the notice of intent.
But then Mark's point is it's 1,200, so I mean, if we want to
Well,
include it,
what I'm getting to, Stan,
right,
is
it's not going to change my mind on,
for $1,200, to better the resource, perhaps we could ask for a larger mitigation area.
We could, but I would still motion to have a fine, because of what the event,
This is already pretty big.
what happened.
Oh, it is.
So
But bigger is better.
We've done that a lot in the past,
Mhm.
and many times, these things, there's question marks over what happened. These, to me, were pretty egregious, new structures in the 0 to 50 that went in. Contractors in this town know the ropes. Property owners know something about, you know, these processes. So it's an egregious violation in my mind, and so we should proceed with a fine and not tuck that money towards the mitigation. And it is a good mitigation package. That's why I'm not advocating removing the walkway, I think.
I have a maybe unrelated question, but it's somewhat related. If that existing stairway is left the way it is right now, without any maintenance to it or cleaning or whatever, it's going to become scummy, it's going to become soft. I mean, it's going to have green fern growing on it. It's going to have to be treated on an every other year basis, I would think, to keep it safe to walk on. What kind of a chemical would we allow them to clean that stairway?
I think you just power wash it.
No chemicals.
Yeah.
No chemicals,
Yeah.
okay, and we would include
Yeah.
no
That's
chemicals,
a.
For 20 years, it's going to last that way. Yeah.
okay.
However, I mean, it's not just landscaping timbers, it's pea stone, right? There are gonna be weeds growing in the pea stone, to your point. And that's not gonna take very long. It'll take a year or two. And what is the homeowner gonna do about the weeds in the pea stone? I'll give you one guess, and it's not good. And I don't know what control we have over that.
All we can do is put the condition on, all we can do is put the condition on that there's to be no chemical application, and if they are doing it, then it's.
Weed retardant fabric.
I don't know.
So-
No chemicals are going to be used.
So on issuance of a certificate of compliance, if those steps are completely weed-free, after 3 years, I'd be very suspicious that,
Well, there are other applications that would,
You could do it by hand.
You could hand weed it.
Yeah, actually, the best way to do it is to put a weed fabric underneath the pea stone, so they can always pull, if they hadn't already, pull back the pea stone, lay down the weed fabric, and put the stone on top. That's a very common application to prevent the weeds from growing up through any of the stone.
yeah, but
Probably
the
the easiest-
reality is the seed's going to germinate in the silt. It's not going to germinate down deep, so that's
Sure, but
really
it's a
not
lot
going to
less
be
to-
applicable. I mean, it's easy enough for a homeowner to treat that with flame or
that's true.
any other
Well,
substance that wouldn't be considered organic. So, I mean, chemical. So, there's methods that do work.
yeah, all right.
It's a
Strong,
tough,
clear message.
it's a tough issue. I mean, that bank was, was not disturbed before that walkway came in. So it's hard, but I do think there's a lot of value to the vegetation plan. So that's kind of driving my thoughts.
All right.
I have no objection if you want to come up.
Okay,
Just,
okay. Does anybody have any thoughts on, the fine structure, or, because otherwise, we're going to now roll it into the motion. So, did you want to comment on the fines?
If I could, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I would ask the commission members, if you just take a moment to reflect on the evidence you've heard about this particular property. So they bought the property in September of 2017. The testimony at the public hearing was that the owner was undergoing illness at that time. He was not on the property. That there was somewhat of a renegade company taking care of the property, Home Watch Property Management. That Home Watch Property Management was the one that made these changes to the property without any specific permission from the property owner. And that once discovered, they were fired by Boston Council for the homeowner. I've seen the correspondence. A new company was hired. Mr. Dorfman is here, who represents that company. And the first thing the homeowner did was advise that he should retain a fresh set of professionals. So Sean was retained, Sean Riley, and Seth's company, and my office was retained. And all of us said, you got to report. And so that's the law. So they got together, went and started a series of meetings with Amy, invited her to the site. Didn't even know all of the things that had been done at that time. We're putting together an existing conditions plan and a prior plan, piecing together aerials, trying to figure out exactly what occurred. So if I was a commission member, I'd say to myself, what kind of message do I want to send? It seems to me that the fine, which generally is for a knowing or intentional violation, wasn't committed here by the property owner. It was committed by Home Watch Property Management, and I certainly would not object to a fine that was issued to that company. However, the signal you're sending to this property owner by including a fine after him coming forward after a great deal of expense, what you've all determined to be, I think, pretty good mitigation plan, not what you'd preferred, but everybody's trying to make the best out of this situation. But a lot of money's been spent by the property owner. The message you're going to send is, it's not a good idea to come forward. It's not a good idea to go out and hire professionals. Because at the end of the day, the Conservation Commission, even if you come in and correct everything, is going to issue a fine on top of that. And fines are generally reserved for intentional or repeated violations of the Wetlands Protection Act. So I'd ask you to take a look at the equities of the situation. Don't quarrel with you, Mr. Chairman. That stairway is egregious in the buffer zone. It's egregious in a coastal bank. I've seen it. But I think you have to listen to the evidence, not that you haven't, but take into consideration the evidence about this property owner. And I'd encourage you, if you're disposed to issue the fine of $1,200, that it be issued against the contractor that did that without permission, that knew about it. Because as soon as the property owner found out about it, he retained professionals, took their advice, and reported it, and figured out how to try and fix it. And so I don't think those are the facts, if I was a Conservation Commission member, would be ones that I'd base a fine on to the property owner, because it sends the wrong message to people. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Very thoughtful comments. I'm not sure how people feel, Amy.
I was just gonna state, I'd have to ask for advice if you were to do that, because the previous, manager or owner or whatnot of Home Watch is the one who was on at the time of this is no longer head of the company, I believe. The previous owner is stepped back in.
Right, but it's still the same company.
Okay, yes, but yeah, we could, so yes, you could, none of us were there when it actually happened, so.
That's my line of thought, is we don't know what really happened. We just know that structures appeared in the 0 to 50, and the present owner is responsible. And we appreciate that he came forward, but we don't know exactly what happened. So
We encourage them to take that view of their responsibility.
I think as property owner, it's their responsibility to pursue if they want to recoup that fine someplace else.
You know, it's not the fine, it's not the amount of money so much, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, but the statement that a fine against this property owner as if they were the violators of the Wetlands Protection Act. Because that's the message the fine is sending. And I think I just heard you say, in your own mind, the evidence is unclear that they did anything. Now, they're the property owner, so they're responsible at the end of the day, and I appreciate that. In fact, the statute, 13140, says that if you buy a piece of property and there were violations on it, you can be responsible for those. Now, but what it says is you're responsible to correct them. And after 3 years, you're not even responsible to correct them under the State Act. The statute of limitations expires.
Under which act?
The State Wetlands Protection Act, 13140. It's very clear that if you buy a piece of property, there's been violations on it, after 3 years, no civil action can be brought, or criminal, to require you to put it back.
Are you suggesting that we request them to take the stairway out?
No, I'm not. I think they've made a good faith effort to come in here and permit after the fact. All I'm suggesting to you is it seems to me that the fine ought to be issued against what I would suggest the weight of the evidence shows, the people who took those actions knowing that they were supposed to get permits. And they didn't do it.
Yeah, so we don't.
And the property owner, as soon as they found out, reported.
Yeah, we don't have that evidence, so I think we have to look to the property owner. Yeah. And I really feel that staircase is an issue that is on the margin with the way some of the members are thinking right now. So, you know.
Understood.
I don't think the fine is that hard of a penalty, given that staircase is on some of the members' minds that it should be removed. So, I don't know. You folks, you heard the argument.
That's why I was originally saying, should it be a separate issue to vote on? Because I don't know what people think. I'm not saying it should or shouldn't. I'm just saying if you combine them,
Yeah.
you're saying
Well,
you're voting for the whole thing, both issues.
I think we're ready for a motion, and we can discuss the motion if it's seconded, and then we can go from there. So.
One last clarification before we do that. Going back, I'm
Right.
confused with the management company now. The previous owner, they're still owned, the management company was a legal entity.
Right.
The people that took over were responsible for all the unapproved things. But now the original owner is taking back, but that's not the current management company, that's the other management company.
I don't know whether it's the same legal entity, and if in fact the board is disposed to look more closely at that issue, I'd be happy to try and provide any information about that company that would assist you that I could,
I wasn't.
but I don't have it this evening.
But that's not the current management.
No, it's not Mr. Dorfman's
That's what
company.
that's what I was.
Mr.
gonna
Dorfman
get.
assisted the owner in retaining the consultants who said, hey, you gotta go,
I was going
you gotta
the
report all
way
this
with
stuff.
this.
That's the
No,
way it is.
never
And we
mind.
all told him that.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to move that we approve the notice of intent with the addition of the 4 $300 fines for the specific instances that have been cited in our discussion.
And the changes Amy had requested, or mentioned, the land.
Oh, and removing the landing on the walkway down the hill, was there another change?
And the other change at the top of the walkway.
Yeah, there's, I mean, technically the new stuff in the 50 that's, it's basically connected to the walkway. It's like a terrace part of the walkway.
There's two pieces to that.
There's two pieces.
Two pieces.
Yeah.
Okay, so we didn't actually fully discuss that, did we?
I think we did last.
So,
Are we taking out the entire, that's this little area right here?
Yes.
Are we requesting the entire part taken out, or only the part that's in the 0 to 50?
Up to you.
can I just suggest that
Also, no.
we move and hopefully find a second for the motion, then we have a discussion and make this one modification. Now let's talk about the specific point, the terrace at the top of the walkway.
It's a piece within the 50 that I felt we were clear that was going to be asked to be removed.
Right.
That was my understanding.
Just the little piece inside the,
Well, that whole piece that connects, or just the piece?
oh,
that's
this,
in
the
50?
landing, yeah, right, the
Landing's
landing,
what
that
you're
was
talking
part of my motion.
And I think that little blurb over there too,
Oh, this,
I think.
Is that an issue?
oh boy.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just wanted to point out, we don't have any concerns about anything within the 50 that isn't the actual stairs, because we think that does direct the pedestrians down to that lower area. But I would point out that some of the terrace outside the 50 actually does play the role of retaining the slope. So we'd have to look at the best way to do that, because it's a retaining wall. Part of it is a retaining wall, and if we just remove it, we may have other issues. But for your consistency about the 50-foot buffer, we could certainly remove,
Yep.
anything that's
So
not
that-
structural stairs
Right.
within the 50.
So the piece, the terrace that is on that edge of the 50-foot line,
Yeah, but
is that a concrete wall or is that a
That's
timber?
That's timber, that's
Yeah.
timber, so it could be,
Yeah.
be
So-
removed.
Right, so I think that could be removed.
That little piece?
Just to be consistent with the
Yeah.
regulations. It's not a serious concern.
Okay, so are we clear on the proposal?
Well, my motion did not address that piece. So either we go with my motion or somebody propose an alteration of my
You
motion.
can amend it.
Right, but I'm unclear about what to do with that point, so does
We
someone else
we
wanna
had discussion
propose
earlier
an
about
amendment?
taking it out, it's a...
Okay, so as Seth just pointed out, part of that structure is a retaining wall, so it's unclear to me which piece gets taken out in that case.
The piece that's within the 0 to 50.
That little piece there, is that what you're talking about?
Right.
So this just serves as a retaining wall.
They cut off the timber, right?
Are we talking about the exterior portion that forms the walkway?
Cutting that little piece that's inside of 50 out.
Okay. Because this little piece right here is a retaining wall for this plant bed that's above it.
This piece here,
Yeah.
so you could
So you're
leave
talking about
that,
the outer piece? You're talking about removing the outer?
that whole piece there
Mhm.
that's contained between here and here.
I got you.
Could that just be removed and have another retaining wall put in to hold it?
Hold it at the
that's-
50.
Or landward of that, that way it's not a weird angular piece. You could do
That's
that.
what I would expect.
Yeah.
Okay, John,
That's John.
Okay, so I'm not sure how to,
I think you just make an amendment to your
Right.
motion to include that terrace, that all components of the structure in the 0 to 50 is to be removed.
okay, I make a motion to amend my motion that that piece be removed. That, and I'm just struggling with the language to specify that piece. I think it's
The structure with the
Structure and the 0 to 50.
0 to
the
50.
structure in the 0 to 50 attaching to the existing stairway.
Yes, that works.
Okay.
So I'll second your.
So we got a second to the amendment. Any further discussion? Any further comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Was it unanimous?
Did anybody abstain? I didn't hear anybody.
I'm opposed.
Okay, we have one opposed.
Okay.
Are we gonna discuss fine?
The fines,
That was-
the fines
It's
were,
part of the
Fines
motion.
were included.
they were in the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, members.
Mr. Chairman, once we finish, putting this back together, we have some people here from the public here for the discussion, if we could jump to that.
Sure.
Actually, that might be next anyways.
What is the discussion?
Recommend we would do 25 Trout Brook first. No? Let's do, sorry, folks.
Convoluted.
I have it.
So, Commissioners, this is John Leong. He's the owner of 25 Trout Brook Road. And I'll just, if you don't mind, I'll just do a quick introduction while we're here.
Sure.
So we went out to the site today, I took some of the members, just so they can see what we're talking about. Mr. Leong had me over to discuss a potential future project about land management and maintaining the view that he does have out towards Red River Beach. And in the meantime, at the same time, you also said, hey, this is what was done to the property as well. And we saw two areas where there had been very, very pervious patios before that are now very formalized. And so I recommended that, they are in the 0 to 50, I recommended that we come in and speak with you about them here tonight. Sorry, I don't have photos from anybody who wasn't there. I did take a photo on my phone, I just didn't have time to download it, but feel free to jump in.
So we bought 25 Trout Brook in early 2017 and did quite a bit of work on the house and took down, actually worked with, on Amy's recommendation, worked with Crawford Land Management to do a number of things at that time, sort of vista pruning and whatnot, and taking a tree down that was threatening the house. We also did things like replace the roof and put solar panels on and things like that. And then part of that, we put in, there's a wooden retaining wall that was thought to be in disrepair. We were going to repair it. And then contractor said, would you like to put in a patio? And I said, that'd be great. At the time, I probably, especially having worked with Amy and Nick Crawford before, I probably should have thought, okay, this is something that we have to run by Conservation Commission. I just didn't do it. I did talk to the contractor. He thought everything was okay. He said he talked to somebody down here. I think it actually was the building department, but not the Conservation Commission, but I don't want to throw him under the bus. I mean, I'm the homeowner, I'm responsible for this, and I had experience with Amy and Nick, so it just should have crossed my mind, and it just didn't. So then I've been talking with our neighbors, the Ayubs. It turns out that Paul and I went to college together, and we've sort of become friendly. And you probably know, they've had a big a job here. And just in talking with them, just sort of realized, well, maybe we should be thinking about whether we did this properly. And so when Amy came out with Nikki to the property, I did say I might have screwed up, and would you take a look at this and let me know what I should do if I did screw up. So that's why I'm here.
I really do fault the contractor in this case. And you haven't told me who he is, or who they are. I would like to know, but I mean, you don't have to tell us, because they know better. If he came up to the building department, I mean, going from something that was pretty informal, maybe had some railroad ties around it, but was very pervious to, I mean, we looked at it again today, it's not pervious at all. It's got stone dust joints, it doesn't readily drain. It's much more of a structure now, which is actually in violation of our 50-foot no disturb. So contractors around the Cape do know that they have to go to conservation. It's very obvious you live close to the water. And we do our best to try to work with contractors. I have to say, for the record, just more on camera, I gave Mr. Leon a list, or a few names of people that we commonly see. I never say you need to use somebody.
Yeah.
I can't do that, and I don't do
Yeah.
that. But I give them a list of area contractors who do vegetation work. So I really fault the contractor more than you in this case. I know it is your property and your responsibility. But
Okay. So what's before us tonight?
So we're kind of here to try to see what we can fix this. I can't recommend, unfortunately, that you keep the patio as it is, very impervious. That having the patio there was it was fairly informal, but it was very pervious. There were stones, from what I recall. I can show you who weren't there a picture of what it is now. And it would be against our regulations, which we hold other people very strictly to. So this is just an example. This is where Carolyn is standing. And you can see that it's pretty tightly grouted and sealed and very formalized.
Would it be
kind of goes on both sides.
Would it be an after-the-fact RDA or notice of intent?
Well, it depends on how the commission, if the commission agreed, if the commission was in favor of letting you keep this as it was, then I would recommend an after-the-fact notice of intent. However, if you're really not, if you're in favor of making it pervious again and less formalized, I could work with him administratively on that, I feel.
Okay.
So it's up to you on how you want to deal with it. If it's something that you think you would permit as is, then have you do the after-the-fact notice of intent.
And obviously, I'm coming here in the spirit of wanting to be cooperative.
Absolutely.
Right. How do folks feel?
Well, being there this afternoon, I was angry. I wasn't angry with you. I was angry with the contractor. This is kind of stop. They know, and this was, to me, as egregious as what we saw in the prior incidents.
If not more so.
This was not right. It cost the homeowner a lot of money, and it could cost the homeowner a lot of money to remove it. And this is an issue that has got to be taken up by, I don't know, conservation commissions maybe across the Cape. These contractors have to know that they can't just do this just to make money. And go into the building department, I don't think was the right thing to do.
Okay.
Well, you don't need a building permit for a patio. I don't know if he said that, oh, I live on the river, or, oh, I live near a wetland, or if he just said, I'm building a patio, do I need a permit, which is, you know, I don't know.
I mean, so, to be honest, the reason why I haven't given you his name, because I feel like maybe he's much more knowledgeable than I expect, but I feel like in my relationship with him, he's been honest with me.
Okay.
And so that's why, you know, and maybe he knows a lot more than he let on, but, you know, when I told him when I was coming here, he felt very badly, wants to know what the outcome is. I told him if you were waterboarding me, I would give him up in a second.
Well, that's
Yeah.
I'm done.
I'm not sure what's there. I understand the two aspects of the patio.
Yeah.
When you walk down underneath the above deck, you also have that decking underneath, and then under the gazebo part,
Yeah.
there's like a room that's been
Yeah.
put in there. Was that new?
No, that's all there. And the decking, that was
Just
there.
refurbished or whatever.
Yeah, we just put windows in.
Okay.
I
And
looked
then-
back at photos I had after,
Okay.
yeah, and I did see some timbers outlining the old patio, which was very informal, and that room wasn't closed. I should have
And
started
the
somewhere.
decking
Sorry about
underneath?
that.
Through the-
I didn't have photos of decking, but.
There was the decking underneath the deck is on top of a cement platform.
Oh,
From
I
the,
don't even think it's cement, I think it's pervious, because
It's
when you
wi-
look at your decking
Yeah.
next to the patio, there's a gap of about 3 or 4 inches, and when I looked, I couldn't see that clear, but it almost looked like crushed stone or something underneath there. I don't think it was solid, well,
Well,
I couldn't tell.
I mean, I know that when we would take, we'd walk, there's an outdoor shower there. And so one question is, do we want decking? So when my kids were walking back there, my kids are soft feet, you know, tender feet, and so they said we want decking instead of the cement. So I do remember there was some cement there,
I was
and
just
that's why.
looking one on one corner of the
Okay.
patio, I wasn't sure what was underneath.
Okay. I mean, we certainly didn't pour any new cement or anything like that, but there was, yeah.
There is room for mitigation on the lot as well, just to have that.
I think the whole situation is sad, and it angers me it saddens me and it angers me at the same time. Because it is definitely something we would never in a million years have approved.
I understand that.
Now, this same contractor, if you use the same man to pull up the patio, he's gonna get paid on both ends, which doesn't seem quite right. But is there the reason we don't want impervious there is for runoff.
Well, there's a couple of reasons. You're in the riverfront area, so it's a 200-foot riverfront area from the mean high water line landward. You have a percentage coverage that you are.
I'm sorry?
You have a percentage coverage maximum on your lot of surface, of structure. And before, when the patio was very pervious and informal, that didn't count against you. So it's not just against the Wetland Protection Act portion, it's against the Rivers Act of the state. So technically, you went from an impervious surface that didn't count towards your overall disturbance of hardscape to something that does. And it's within the 0 to 50. And also any runoff that close, even though it's hopefully there's nothing in the runoff from that patio, it is potentially running off more directly than it would have into a sensitive area.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, and the reason we have our 50-foot no disturb, granted you had stuff there before, is to prevent the gradual forward creep of structures and use into the most sensitive areas, so.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you bought that property because you love the natural setting.
Yeah,
It's
obviously, yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mark, any comments?
yes, Amy, in the photos you said that you had, does it show the height of the perimeter wall?
You know, I had it from taken up, I was standing up, looking down, so I could, how high was the timber? I mean, I believe you're gonna be honest, so the wall that was around it previously, how high was that timber?
I just can't,
Low, right?
I can't remember. I don't think it was high, yeah. What I remember is the home inspector, when he went by and looked at it, he saw that some of them were in disrepair, and he said, "You want to
they
get
were
this
rotting.
fixed." Yeah.
I do remember that, a few years ago.
Could you speculate a couple timbers high, 3 timbers high, perhaps? Because right now it's 5.
Yeah, I could easily imagine him adding 1 or 2. I can't say that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so, aside from this complication of having to come and talk to the Conservation Commission and confess your sins and those of your contractor, I mean, are you happy with the way it is right now? As far as you're concerned, it's done?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do anything more to it, if that's what you mean.
And there's a reason I'm asking this question. It's not just curiosity, because those retaining walls did not look at all solid to me. And in fact, in the south patio there, on the south side of the house, it looked to me like some of that, I forget what the paving material was for the patio, but the joints were grouted with, what did you call that stuff? It's like
It's called polymeric dust.
polymeric dust, but it had pulled away and there were already cracks on the inside, and I attributed that to the actual retaining wall not being particularly solid. And so I think that even if we weren't requiring you to make any changes right now, it wouldn't be too long before you were back here because you had
Because
made
the
changes.
integrity of the retaining wall, you think, would not be.
Doesn't look great to me at all.
One of
And,
the posts was also extremely loose, and there was
Well,
a
the
board
posts
kicked
on
out
top.
already.
And one, I mean, if there were rotting timbers, at least one of those timbers on that side did not even completely cover or retain the sand behind it. There was sand coming out. So, the whole structure seems to me to be kind of dodgy at this point, and I'm not, I'm not sure what that means about what we should be doing here, but it's almost like changes need to be changed anyway.
I'd just like to add on to that, because you're right, it's not a conservation issue, but like on that rail that you have there, that was attached to that landscape timber, I was shaking.
Yeah,
That whole landscape timber, it's like they put nails in it and it was moving. And there was one corner of your stone patio, it was just a small piece that was sinking down and broke off. Remember right in the corner there, it was sinking down.
Well, yes, and it is an issue for us, because if that stuff collapses, it's another problem, and sand and other stuff getting onto the bank, and it doesn't look particularly solid to me at all. I don't know what you think, Mark. You had a look at that, but
I think the workmanship leaves something to be desired, but that's neither here nor there.
unless the thing falls apart and sand, the retained sand comes out, but
I would recommend that, we somehow make it more pervious. I don't think the footprint, from what I saw in past pictures to now, and the footprint, like where the edge, it hasn't really changed. So it's not closer to the wetlands than it was prior, but we do something to make it more pervious and less of a structure. And maybe at the same time work at stabilizing your slope. And I think I mentioned last time when I was there, is at the base of the wall as well, some planting would be good, because you were getting some erosion right at the base there too.
So, I'd certainly be willing to work with, Crawford Land Management to think about how to best do that. And if there were mitigation things that you asked me to do, I would absolutely be happy to do that.
Any comments, Jim?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what's what happened. I don't have a plan and didn't see it myself, but it seems like it's possibly approvable. Maybe there should be a filing and with some mitigation and some changes that could be approved.
Yeah, I know I can't vote or rule on anything tonight myself. I haven't seen it, and I'm hearing from some folks that it's pretty significant, so,
I can give you a sense. I asked the contractor how big a piece was it, anticipating coming here, and he said it's 230 square feet on one side and 271 on the other. So that gives you an idea of the size of a total of 501 square feet.
yeah, so, I mean,
And
this,
our goal would be to get that pervious. That would be.
Not just, I'm not saying just break it up, but remove some stone, maybe do some sort of a resurface out there to make it more pervious, maybe even grass or something else, or vegetation in the joints between the stones, which is, I think, some of what you had prior, but it's something that I can.
would it still be a new structure in 0 to 50?
Because they had something, they had it there prior in the house, I don't know how old the house is it 50s?
I think it's like early 60.
Early 60s. It's modern style, and what was there before, I remember what was there before, and it was stone, and it had some vegetation between. I don't think it would be really considered so much of a structure anymore if we could break that up.
Yeah. All right, so.
It would replicate kind of similar to what was there, but hopefully provide a little more stability with planting.
All right, so this is coming back to us.
Yeah, if you want, I can work with the owner
Yeah.
and whoever you choose for
Yeah.
a contractor to,
Mhm.
and bring a plan back in front of you.
If I may add, also, the integrity of that wall should be addressed all at the same time.
I think we got that
That's-
message
Yeah.
too, is to have somebody look at that wall.
Yeah.
That needs to be a large part of it.
Okay. And would that be something like the same home inspector? Would there be a way that, rather than go back to the contractor and say,
Yeah.
make the wall better, I'd like to have somebody outside saying, here's what needs to be done,
Right.
and then be able to have a conversation with the contractor at that point?
Yeah, I'm sure, I mean, people in I work with the building commissioners, and I'm sure, I'll ask Ken Weeks, he's our building
Okay.
inspector, but he's been, on the last project, he came out and gave advice too on how to make things more stable and safe,
Okay.
and I'll ask him if he could.
That'd be
mind
great. That'd be great.
Okay.
To give you some free advice, if you will.
Yeah, that'd be great.
How do commissioners feel about a fine for this situation?
I wish we had the ability to find the contractor. But the homeowner does have some ability to go back to the contractors and complain.
Is there a time period at which we can no longer issue a fine?
It's typically 15 days from notice, but I mean, because we're discussing it, that timeframe kind of goes forward.
Mhm.
Oh, well, it's a gray area. Once
Okay.
it's coming to it came to my attention a couple weeks ago. It's coming to your attention tonight.
Right. I need to see it, and I haven't seen it, so that's part of the reason.
It's up to you. I mean, I'm sensing we're gonna have some good cooperation here.
Right.
So maybe table it for now.
Okay.
Yeah, I do see some differences where apparently this is an area that is surrounded by lawn, is that correct?
There's a bank on the
No,
lower side
it,
that drifts back down to the well area.
It was confined previously by some old timbers.
Confined by old timbers,
Yeah.
so there hasn't been expansion
There's
into
not, no.
natural area.
Probably not expansion per
A
se.
little degradation maybe on the edges.
Deep, right.
Yeah, it's tough. I would like to find the contractor. Every contractor knows that situation should pull a permit.
And I happily talk, I mean, off the record with your contractor and with answer any questions you might have about working your wetlands. When
Absolutely.
in doubt, call us.
Yeah.
Okay, so those who haven't seen it, we'll try to get out there and take a look, and then you'll come back with a discussed resolution. Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Note to contact you. And last but not least, 522 Pleasant Lake Avenue.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Julie Murata, and this is my
Bob
husband,
Murata.
Bob.
Hi, thank you for having us.
And March 11th, we purchased the estate of my late mother's home at 522 Pleasant Lake Avenue. At that time, we got a letter on March 28th from the Conservation Commission saying that we didn't have the authority to have a dock. And I do have information that my father requested permission from the state of Massachusetts, and he was issued permission to have a dock for 30 years. So we need to know what we need to do to satisfy the town. Obviously, I could not find a notice of intent. I couldn't find an order of condition or anything that my father had on file. So I don't know if he did something wrong. I have no idea. This was way back in 1994. So,
The dock has been there forever,
yeah, it's been there for 25 years.
at least.
That was
Yeah,
during
back
the
to the
amnesty period.
60s.
That was the amnesty period, yep.
Back to the 60s it's been there, yeah.
Well, with the
With
previous
previous
homeowner,
owner,
right.
yeah.
So what do we need to do to make this permanent and something we can put into the water again this spring?
So this all came up because we did a big survey around Long Pond of all the structures that we didn't have orders of conditions for. What happens all the time, and so actually several people on your stretch there have been in front of us for various reasons, just trying to protect the integrity of the town.
Sure. Yeah.
So for you, it's great news, and Nikki did tell me that you had the Chapter 91 license, which is the biggest hurdle. It's not something we always get copies of, so it's not surprising we didn't have it. Had we known, we would have told you, but it's one of those things that the owners aren't required to give us copies of it.
Okay.
Do you have it now?
I have it, yeah, I have it.
Do you have it now?
I have it now,
Okay.
yes.
Perfect, okay.
Yep, so we have it now, so that's good. Technically, I mean, you're supposed to have an order of conditions for docks as well, which would be a notice of intent filing to the Conservation Commission. Happy to review what you have currently to see if that can be used for the filing, if that sounds good to the commission.
No, my father-in-law, he had to have been here. He was so astute at doing everything. He had to be here, we just can't find the paperwork. Because I remember the whole thing he
And back
did
in-
and went through
Yeah,
everything.
but it's so long ago.
Yeah, we can't find
I checked,
anything.
our records go back until the early 1960s.
Yeah.
In conservation,
And there's nothing on him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Believe me, before we send any letters out to people, we do check.
Oh,
Sure,
no,
no, I
there's
trust
nothing.
you
But he
completely.
was such
I'm just so surprised.
such a
He was such a
particular guy,
stickler.
yeah, stickler for keeping records. It was funny when we didn't find anything. Oh my God, what the heck?
Yeah.
You know, like-
So what do you want me to do?
I would say, I mean, legally it should, because even if doing any maintenance on it would require, right now, you're not technically, you're permitted by the town. So it would be a notice of intent. Unless, I mean, we don't normally do docs with RDAs, request for determinations. It's up to you, though.
I don't know that already would apply to a
Yeah.
dock in the water.
Right.
So
It's almost the same process anyways. So I would suggest, they filed it after the fact, or not after the fact, because you do have a legal document. But file the notice of intent. I'm happy to meet with you, and assist you a little bit with that application. And we can go from there.
So,
I think it also came up because Nikki was looking at storage of docks near the wetland areas. Just out of curiosity, I mean, it's been there for a long time. Your dock is being stored on an
On the
old
top,
deck
right,
with
right.
a retaining,
A retaining wall.
too.
Right.
How long has that been?
That's
there?
been there
It's
since the
since he
60s too.
bought it,
Yeah.
which was over
I
30
mean, that was
years
there
ago.
since,
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, even though it's close to the pond, at least it is nice that it's on top of an old structure and not on vegetation. like
Right.
some
oh
other
yeah,
people have.
nothing's there.
Yeah,
Nothing is
yeah.
there. We made sure that we didn't do anything or cut anything
We
or move
appreciate-
anything.
We appreciate that.
Our beach is getting smaller because of the
Yeah, right,
vegetation.
we're creeping in with
Yeah.
vegetation, but that's
But
okay.
it's protecting your property.
No, it is, yeah, no, we're very happy, because it's great there, we got all sand. Yeah, it's great.
So I think it's gonna be, it'll be it'll be a new notice of intent.
Okay.
Application, and why don't, when you're ready, call me and we'll set up an appointment to, meet and get you started on the way out of here.
I'm here tomorrow.
Can we call
Are
you
you here
tomorrow?
tomorrow? Or-
I am, I have some appointments, I could probably around lunchish time, I might be available.
Could do that.
I can
Okay.
give you the application on
Okay.
your way out.
Oh, that'd be
Okay.
great.
And,
That'd be great.
does that sound okay to everybody?
It sounds like the right way to go. I
Mhm.
don't know what
It's
else
a,
you do.
I just have one question.
Yeah.
Did you
Sure.
mention your permit from the state?
I have that,
No,
yes.
no. This is from my knowledge. It said for 30 years. Does that mean it expires?
It expires in 5 years.
Right.
5 years, so then you have to reapply it then?
Right.
Oh,
ask
good.
for an extension or reapply,
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
one,
all I want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
which actually you'll need invalid, right now, the current law, back then for the amnesty period, you didn't need a valid order of conditions for a dock. Now you do. So if you were to get the extension you're gonna need in 5 years anyway, you're gonna need an order of conditions which is what you file a notice of intent, our output is the order of conditions.
Oh, okay, all
Oh.
right,
even
So,
better, then. That'll help us.
okay,
so it will hopefully help you.
Okay,
okay.
that makes a lot of sense.
So we're in good shape then, and we approve that
Yeah, I'll get
document,
the
and when then we're
application
done?
tonight, yeah. And there's a price, I would
Okay.
assume is a cost
Yeah,
for.
it must be a cost.
Fine.
It is by linear foot.
Okay,
So we'll have, I can't tell you off the top of my head. There's a blanket fee of $135 to the town, but in addition, there's a DEP fee.
And how long is that fee for? Forever, or is it yearly, or
One time.
one time?
okay,
It's a one-time fee.
Okay.
awesome.
And is this notice conditions lifetime, or is it, how long is it for?
It's typically 3 years, but
3
the
years.
commission can issue extensions, or we can put language in there that would potentially allow you to maintain but not expand on a structure.
Wouldn't Chapter 91 accept it as an approved order of conditions? You know, at some point in recent history, there was an approved order of conditions, they would need
No,
it.
not during the amnesty period.
But for this one, in this case, would they need another?
That's what I'm saying, they're gonna need an order of conditions anyway from us.
Right, but why wouldn't the one we issued be legitimate 5 years from now? They'd
They
need,
probably would.
yeah, I think so. So I
I
think,
don't know for certain, that's their rules. Fine.
right,
Okay.
Okay, we'll
All
deal
right.
with that when we get there.
okay, thanks for your
Great.
time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for your
Can
time.
I do the application?
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Sorry, I took wait.
No, it's okay. Long night for all of you, though. After working all day.
Almost got out easy, but no. How are you guys with the cheat sheet? Can we get that?
I couldn't print it,
Oh, you couldn't?
no.
Looks good to me.
You have an extra copy?
Yeah. The wording I'm 100% good with. There is one I'd like to add, and so I just want to mention that when Amy comes back in, or just ask her about it. But otherwise, the language is, Amy did a good job.
I have a question on number 2, all meetings of the Conservation Commission are video recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
This
are.
one is.
Yeah.
He didn't know.
Yeah.
Amy starts it up right here.
Oh, I thought there were only audio recorded in this
No.
one.
No,
Maybe a year or two years ago it was that way, but
Okay.
not now.
If you
Yeah.
go up there on the screen, you can see what the cameras are.
Yeah, that 100%. So
Okay.
on your toes.
Except one time it didn't work. But other
Yeah.
Change my clothes.
Yep.
So when we're done, you can go home and watch the whole thing again on YouTube.
Is that how you did, Joe?
Yeah,
While
I
we're
stay
having
up all
that
night.
dinner.
Get a six-pack of Budweiser.
The
That is
one
hard.
thing I've noticed is that I was at the Kingston Conservation Commission last night getting a fish ladder approved, and I've been to a bunch of other commissions over the years. They have a different process for closing hearings at times. And so I just want to ask her, we've already launched into the cheat sheet. I don't know if that's.
That's
okay.
fine.
And,
I'm glad, go.
yep, for me, I love it. You've made some great edits. The only thing I had was one possible additional number.
Let me get mine.
And that would be on the process of closing a hearing. Are we, is there something?
I can do one for you.
Yeah, because I was before Kingston last night on a fish ladder project, and I've been through a bunch. Different commissions do things differently. And I'd like to know what should we be doing to make sure we're closing hearings properly. And
So, to close hearings, what I would recommend is, when you vote on a project, we usually vote on a project and then 2 weeks later we do the conditions, right?
Mhm.
At that point in time, I would recommend that you vote to approve the orders of conditions and close the hearing.
Okay.
Because from that date, granted, we have everything out usually within a week.
Mhm.
But in the case of a denial, where it takes me at least a week to write it by
Right.
chapter and verse, it gives me 21 days to get
Right.
it out, and it gives you time to look at it again. If you close the hearing when you vote without the draft conditions,
Right.
then it cuts you off by, like 2 weeks in between meetings. It starts the clock for 21 days when you close.
That's good advice, and that's what I see more often. I see a hearing closed with the vote. So if you want to
I would
craft.
recommend that you approve, and I can put it in there, approve a project contingent upon the draft orders of conditions, and you continue it until that date.
Yeah.
And then at that hearing where we approve the orders, you vote to approve the orders of conditions
close.
and close the hearing. And just
Okay.
at the end of it, just say, and close the hearing as part of your motion.
Yeah, if you want to fit in a 2-sentence, that'd be great, because,
It's
yeah,
good.
okay.
Missed that.
Any other thoughts? Because I think Ernie did a great job on this, and Amy did a really good job shaping it up with her edits, so I think it's in pretty good shape.
Hopefully it's helpful for people.
I'd just like to say, as a newbie here, I find it very helpful, and I appreciate Ernie
Yep.
and Amy and whoever else
Ernie did most of it.
Yeah.
contributed to that. I find it very helpful.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we need to formally approve it, or we just adopt it? I think we just adopt it. And,
You don't even need to, it's just, it's more, it's an educational document.
Yep, okay.
Do we need to, and we talked a little bit, maybe the time Brad was away, and because of the selectmen's meetings, should we be announcing at the beginning of the meeting to
We
the
technically-
public?
Oh, yeah, we should say this hearing is being recorded.
And
Oh.
maybe the sign-ins?
Yeah, please
Mhm.
sign in, this meeting is being recorded. If you are recording the meeting, please let the chair know now.
And if you wish to speak, come up
Put
to
that
the mic.
language right in
Those
there.
types of things.
Okay.
Open hearing language.
I see it more from when I go to a
Yeah.
selectmen's meeting, what they're,
Yeah.
And
specifying.
I know.
perhaps that could be a preamble for the agenda.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think, I never took the chair lessons, you just all of a sudden one day. Yeah, and I know I've seen other committees where they're really polished. And so, yeah, that'd be good to know what to say every
Sure.
time. Okay. All right, that's great. I'm glad to get that done.
Before we move on to the schedule of the tour, in the light of becoming more educated, MACC is bringing 2 workshops here. It is a Saturday, and Paula's already signed up, but they're bringing 2 fundamentals here to the Cape, to Hyannis, on Saturday, May 4th. It's going to be Fundamentals 103, Plan Review and Site Visit Procedures, and Fundamentals 202, Protecting Wildlife Habitat. You can go to both, or one, or none, but we will I need to know very soon, because it's going to happen. They're filling up, but if anybody else wants to go, let us know. We'll pay. You're doing both. You're doing both.
I didn't waste time because I'm gonna be away that week.
That's fine. Just making sure everyone got the info.
Yeah, thanks.
It's not often that they bring them to the Cape. So,
I've been waiting for so long, I can't do those, so,
I'm out of town.
I know.
I'm out of town.
All right.
I would be interested in the Protecting Wildlife Habitat. I really hope that they do more via webinar soon. They've done some webinars, but well, they also, and they do charge for webinars too. So it's how they do their funding. Okay.
All right, thanks, Andy.
schedule a tour. So you guys tell me when you wanna go, and I'll make it work. The agricultural leased lands for a more formalized tour. Two Great Swamp Bog and Main Street Bog in particular. So we do have, well, it's not coming up for a while though, and one of the leases is coming up in June. I was gonna say we have it 5 Wednesday a month in April, which means that we're gonna have 3 weeks in between meetings at the end. But, so that would be nice, but getting kinda close to that.
In April?
No, in May.
Oh, in May.
It's getting kinda close to that expiration of the lease for, I think it was Great Swamp Bog.
Yes.
Yeah, that wraps in June.
So sooner rather than later, I do need to post it though.
Yeah. Does anybody object to a Friday? Stan, you've had trouble with Fridays in the
Well,
past.
I volunteer usually, but I mean, I could.
What time do you volunteer? All day?
In the morning.
So if it was the afternoon?
But I mean, I could skip that. I mean, I don't know what week you do, because I can probably miss a couple of Fridays anyways, like, we're going to Connecticut
Right.
again that weekend in May that we're talking about.
Well, I was thinking either next Friday or the Friday after.
Here's my problem. I'm working. Yeah, it's just so much is going on. I booked both those Fridays. I usually don't work Fridays, or stay home Fridays, but I booked those for jobs. The 3rd of May, the 10th of May.
Well, it's, yeah, I meant the 3rd too.
Oh,
Because this Friday is too quick.
oh, that's right. Yeah, the 26th I can't, the 19th I can't. The 3rd I think I'm okay.
That's the-
May 3rd.
That's when I'm going.
That's when you're leaving.
Aren't you saying you're going away that weekend?
Yeah, but I'm not going away till Saturday morning.
Yeah. Mark, what are your limitations? You must have lots of stuff booked.
More than I can even think.
I know.
I'll make it work.
I mean, I don't mind staying, I don't mind staying late on certain days, Brad, if you can get back sooner, because it's still light out
Yeah.
until 7, but I know you don't sometimes get back till 6:30.
But Monday through Thursday, I'm
Yeah.
off Cape, and I get back late usually. And then occasionally I book things on the Cape. I'm just looking to see. I'm on the Cape all day on the 30th.
Of April?
Yeah, I've got an evening presentation in Eastham, and I've booked something in Barnstable and a second thing in Eastham. So that, that might be possible
In
to.
the morning?
Yeah, maybe.
Tuesday the 30th?
Tuesday the 30th, I'll be on the Cape all day, and it might be like an 11 to 12 o'clock window. I hate to be so specific, everyone else has got stuff going on.
I don't think you're gonna have,
I don't think everyone's gonna really make it,
yeah, but I mean, you're gonna need to allow more than an hour's time
yeah.
to go out there.
Yeah. Well, May the 3rd, you're away, right? Is May the 10th?
May the 3rd, I'm pretty much good any other Friday.
Yeah.
I mean.
Is May the 10th too late?
No, I mean, I don't mind coming in for a few hours on the weekend if people wanna do it. Something in the world for me.
Yeah. Well, Friday, May the 10th, I don't have anything booked.
Okay.
And, so,
I think we should dedicate at least 3 hours.
yeah.
So morning,
yeah, so-
9 to noon.
Yeah, so April 30th wouldn't really work. I've got to screw to Barnstable and Eastham. All right, if you want to go with the 10th, I think that's good. And if somebody all of a sudden really can't make it, then I think that just try to see it in your own.
We're gonna,
That's
we're gonna,
okay
yeah,
too.
we're gonna have to get as many.
I can't
Maybe.
make it.
Huh?
I can't make it.
Oh, you can't make the 10th?
I'm back from grandparents' day in
Oh.
Albany.
Oh, wow. Let's see. Is the 17th too late?
It's up to you guys. That's the thing, I mean, if you wanna make a decision,
Cool.
that bog is up.
Yeah, you're talking May 17th, right?
Yeah.
And the lease wraps the 1st of June, correct?
The
First of
lease
June.
lapse for Great Swamp the 1st of June.
Yeah,
Um,
so we have to,
but you'd also, then you'd have to have a public meeting about it too.
oh boy.
I mean, so regardless, the lease lapses, in order to release it, you have to put the lease out anyways.
You know what I should do? I should just schedule a day where I'm gonna be here and just, I'm here. And so maybe the 1st, the 2nd, are you guys gone that whole week? That week of
The 1st
May?
is a meeting day.
I'm
It's
just
gonna
gonna,
be a big
I
one,
am
too.
just gone the 2nd and the 3rd.
2nd and 3rd.
We could make site visits extra long on the 1st. Start at
Yep,
noon.
I could do that.
We could start at noon on the 1st.
Carolyn, are you around?
I cannot.
You're gone that whole,
I'm gone for that meeting.
Yeah, you told me. Sorry, Carolyn.
yeah.
That's okay, though.
I could skip golf.
If we did that, if we met on the 1st
That's right
and
under
talked about
grandparents.
things on site, we could put it on the 15th meeting.
Right. Okay. I feel bad,
I did go the other time.
Okay.
Yeah, you've been to both of them.
Because if it's
Yeah.
advertised, we can talk on site, right?
Yeah, you can't make any decisions,
Right,
but
and we
you
can
can
discuss
talk.
it as a group,
Yeah.
which I think is important.
The-
Which one's Great Swamp?
Up by Robbins Pond Conservation Area, the one that's
The one-
very completely treed, pretty much.
Oh, so I was there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was asking, that's one of the
We
ones
didn't
we've
see
got.
all of it, we saw the really treed part. It's
Right.
not, there's some areas that are thinner, but that's the one. So May 1st, noon to 4, site visits.
All right.
For ag properties. And hearings. Okay,
All right, I got one little thing on new business, if it's okay. So, that had a little discussion involved Amy and Heinz Prof, the Natural Resource Director, on the locking of the reservoir conservation area at night. And the reason is because I feel like we're seeing growing evidence of illegal activity with fish harvest there. And so, in the discussion with Heinz, he feels it'd be problematic for his staff to deal with locking it at night, closing it in the daytime. I mean, opening up in the morning again. So I just wanted to put that at the table, see what people felt about that. It's something that, we could participate in the activity, as the property's under our care and custody. So
Ron Saulnier, who lives there, says he could open it in the morning.
that's a big burden every morning, though. It's, what Heinz favors now, I don't think you were involved in that email, but he favors shutting it for all the weekdays. So you're only opening it for the weekend and then closing the weekend. I think the public would not appreciate that. And
I'm sorry, where is the gate?
it's on
Up at the road.
Depot.
Oh, it's right on Depot
It's
Road.
out- There's actually a gate there, yeah.
It was,
So,
it
but
it was
anybody
locked.
can walk in. I
So
mean,
there's no parking.
There's no parking.
So to close it for the entire week would
I think that'd
really
be tough for people that
take
have
people
grown to
out.
love it. For background, it was locked forever during the herring season
Yeah,
at night.
even last year, what's his name was blocking it. I was down there and he'd say, yeah, I'm gonna lock the gate.
Right.
So it's been done until recently. I think it's really important to do.
I think we had a guy approach our technicians, I wasn't there that day, but he offered to sell herring oil. Did I tell everyone this?
Mhm.
Yeah.
They
and-
told me,
And then I've gotten wind of people who are just kind of saying, screw it, I'm tired of waiting, I want to take some fish.
Yeah.
And then we've had some tribal activity that, is
that's under
concerning.
investigation, yeah.
Right, so I favor it, I just want to make it so it's compatible for the staff to deal with it and not
Yeah.
make it difficult for the public that wants to get down there. So kind of like late, and here's the thing, when there's cars down there, it's a person's time to go lock it. You've got to spend that minute to drive down there and see
Yeah.
who's there.
Yeah. No, I think it's really important to do it. I think it probably, is part of the solution for other properties as well.
Yeah.
So it's something that,
So-
a lot of towns do that on their properties.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, it's a really important part of management.
We're pretty open with that property, and
Yeah.
and the other issue that's looming is we're having a bad year with illegal eel poaching. You can sell the glass eels in Maine, you can't sell them here. The price has really got high because the eels are not present in Maine. We're getting activity all over the place. Even though the fine was increased from $100 to $10,000, there's still the incentives. No, per event.
Per event.
Per event. It used to be nothing, $100, and we increased it to 10,000. And this year, we've got a real increase, and that's an area that's been hit in the past. I have no doubt people, if that gate's open, go down there and make themselves a few grand. So I guess just, put on the table, is anybody in a position where they could help out, like taking a night or a morning? I hate to put it all on. Yeah.
I can't, I'm
Yeah.
happy to help.
Right.
I can't do it every day.
Right.
Dive night and dust, that's,
I could open it up for like one morning a week on my way to work.
and it's just during herring season.
It's just during herring season. It's in a
Well,
flash.
yeah,
it'll be
I'm
open.
not so sure. I think in the long term, we have to look at locking some of these
Yeah.
Yeah.
properties, because there's just so much issues and they tend to happen at night, as Leo brought up last time. But, that's a good start anyway, to lock it during the season. And it's probably is possible with the right coordination to have volunteers.
So in other towns that are doing this,
I would
Whose
guess
responsibility is
I would guess it's, in many places, it's town employees, such as the police or something like that.
So,
but-
and the notion
I'll
would
ask
be
them.
open at sunrise, close at sunset? I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah.
Dawn
give or
to
take?
dusk. Dawn to dusk, yeah.
Or even like 7 in the morning. Doesn't have to be crack at
Yeah,
dawn.
right, sure.
But something to give people reasonable access to get in there, enjoy it in the morning, but try to clip off that illegal activity.
Yeah, I could do, 1 or 2 days a week myself, and be happy to do that.
Something, though, you go at night, though, lock the gate, and you go down there and somebody's there, what do you do?
You have to ask them to leave.
Yeah,
I don't feel comfortable doing that.
Ron did that for years, and it was, I'm sure if there was ever an issue, he would just walk away, or maybe call the police or something like that. You don't obviously try and enforce anything personally. But Ron would just, talk to people. It's like, yeah, I gotta lock the gates in a few minutes if you guys don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great, contribution by Ron. And we can't expect Heinz's staff to pick up all those trips there. That's just not gonna happen, so.
Can the police lock it at night?
I can ask, I don't know if it's gonna be an everyday thing, but I can ask.
Unlocking it, I think, would be less problematic for volunteer.
Yes.
If we can incorporate the police department at closing, I think would be
I
advantageous.
would, yes, because it's the whole interaction with people at the end of the day with getting people out, and who knows if there's a car there, where the people are potentially in the woods, and how
Right.
long they're gonna be there. You could be
Right.
waiting there for 2 hours.
Right.
Good signage helps also. The gate closes promptly at
Yeah.
sunset.
What's the best way to make this
Maybe I
happen?
can see if the police can shut it at night, if we can work out opening it in the morning.
Okay.
I could handle some of the morning openings as well.
Yeah, I could do it
I
there.
don't mind opening, but I don't want to close.
Okay.
It's part of just our presence there, all these issues with encroachment and violations and just abuse of the properties. Right now, there's really very little presence of anything at our extensive properties. Fencing, signage, blocking of gates, it's gonna have to happen, and it's not like there's no blueprint for this. A lot of the conservation trusts do this to their properties. A lot of towns, state forest, national. There does need to be some management. It'd be nice if there didn't need to be any, but I think the reality is that there needs to be some management on these properties.
It'll be really tricky. People love to fish there. They love to photograph birds. The activity has exploded in my eye there.
Yeah, it's not
Beautiful place to
necessarily
be,
a bad thing. I mean, a lot of people are really enjoying it, and it's their appreciation for
Yep.
everything there is important.
I think we can look at an 8-week height of the run. You know, the run can go for, 10 weeks. But, this year it's gonna be like 7 weeks because we're already into it. So
Mhm.
I think just people might accept that, yeah, you've gotta have these safeguards. Because there are people abusing everyone's efforts to try to, protect these resources.
And do you think that these poachers only poach between dusk and dawn?
The,
Go out tonight.
the eel poachers are, they're middle of the night.
The eel poachers?
Eel
Yeah,
poachers
that
are
has-
real serious. The herring poaching is kind of different. There's people that are, fed up with what they're seeing, and they're grabbing a few. There's a few people, I think, selling roe. And so they're getting a bunch, and, so there's been an uptick, I think, in part because that herring run has had big numbers 2 years in a row.
Yeah, and it's been publicized as such.
I know, I have some regrets about that.
Well, it's a blessing and a curse, you can.
Right. I've had some people say, why the hell can't I take a few fish? You look how many there are, your number right there says there's 700,000. And so I think some people are stepping out, and then tribal harvest has increased as well, which is considered legitimate. But if it's done in a commercial manner, it's not.
Yeah, that's what we're looking into.
Yeah, it's not. State law says for sustenance only, and
That's right.
no commercial sale. So,
Seems to be an awful lot coming out.
yeah, it's a concern. All right, well, I told Heinz I'll get back to him, and,
I'll
maybe-
call the police tomorrow,
okay,
to see if they can do at least nighttime.
all right.
So would it make sense to talk about setting up just a calendar where people get their names, try to fill in the calendar? I mean, what you're suggesting is police at night, or you're suggesting and volunteers in the morning. So then,
Let me see, yeah, I'll say,
Well,
let me
then
see.
you have a problem with if people are changing out time, who, are you gonna get keys? They're supposed to be
Well,
a key
make
lock, right?
copies.
I think we need copy,
Yeah.
I
Well, I would
picture,
just put a combo lock on there.
Yeah,
to
do a
tell you all the
combo.
Yeah, that would be the
combinations.
simplest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be.
that's a good, well,
That's what we did on all our kiosks.
Yeah, I think there could be a Google Calendar, some sort of
Yeah, right.
document to, that would be pretty easy to fill
Let me see
in.
what I can get the police to do first.
Okay.
And then we can fill in.
okay.
Okay.
And I will contact them.
But yeah, I would like to, it was happening as recently as last year, and it's not happening, it should be. So,
Yeah, back when there was a harvest, it was just routine,
Yeah.
The trucks would pull in there at night and take, tank loads of fish.
Yeah.
And so it was just, it was just done, locked up. All right, thank you.
Got minutes, did you do minutes?
I did not, which, there's a whole bunch we were supposed to get on Google Docs.
Well, there was April 3rd, is the only one I think I have in the,
Yep.
here. I'm doing the March 15th onset, I haven't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I would say if folks are ready to move on April 3rd, let's go for it.
yeah,
There's, you don't have any comments, or?
No, I didn't get it.
Oh, should have been in here. They might have been in. They might have been in, we can
I had planned,
table them.
well, if you want, I had planned to look at them, I just didn't get to the,
They're, yeah, they're not
the
in here,
Dropbox.
they're on here. They may have been finished after the packets were made. They're in the Dropbox.
has anybody looked at them?
I reviewed them, I don't have any comments.
I do too, and I don't have any comments.
Nope, I'm fine.
I trust
No comments.
Carolyn's an ace at this, so if Carolyn had no comments, I'm good.
All right.
Well, I move that we accept the minutes for April 3rd.
Second.
Second, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All right.
Not too bad. Anything else, Amy?
Oh,
Is that all?
yes, so next Friday is the Arbor Day seedling giveaway. 20, yep, from 9 to noon.
Before we turn it off.
Typically the plants are given away very quickly, so if you wanna come, make sure you get here around 9. We're giving away pawpaw, persimmon, false indigo, maidenhair ferns, and wildflower seeds this year. So we'll be out in the back parking lot. If the weather's good, if it's not, we'll be in the lobby of town hall. So the plants are arriving tomorrow. And then the day after is our annual tour to trash community cleanup. From about 9:30 until lunchtime, starting and ending at the community center. You can sign up online if you want to come on the Harwich Conservation Trust website, pick out a route for you and your friends and family if you want to do it. And basically it's just a day to clean up the town. And lunch will be provided, and there will be prizes for incentives, gift cards, things like that.
From the most stuff collected?
Well, is it the Guess the Nip contest?
Oh,
We have people who have collected nips all year.
Oh.
And off the roadsides, not that they, well, I don't, but we have a few people that we should probably recognize who 1 or 2 days a week go picking trash on the roadsides. It's just what they do.
Wow.
So they collect nips. It's like their big pet peeve is how many you find. And then we add what we collect at the event, and it was thousands and thousands. So we have a lunch on display, if you will. And the person who guesses the closest number gets a gift card to someplace. And then just for coming, you enter a raffle for Brax, or so Brax is donated, Ember's donated, Sativa. Local businesses are really involved.
Oh, nice.
They should put a deposit up.
NASA Disposals has donated. We got a grant from United Way this year. So.
Nice, very good work.
Well, even like they're, considering the, like, water bottles and stuff, I mean, the state of Connecticut has deposits on all that stuff.
Yeah.
On nips?
No, on the water bottles.
Yeah.
Good
We all want to deposit on NIP.
Do they have any figures on the results of how that works?
Well, I think it's like any deposit bill, it does get cleaned up. I mean, look at canned beer and soda bottles years ago before you had no deposits. I mean, there was stuff all over the place. People wouldn't pick it up,
Well,
So that's all I got.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Amy, what was the date of that